All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and have been away for a little bit, so I've missed missed the last two EPL breaks, and we just had the international window, and I wasn't really expecting to speak about this, but then I forgot that this was actually the big one for U.S. Men's soccer with Pochettino was back last window, but this was finally like the non-friendly window. The the first go of it. We didn't necessarily see any difference. This time we got a bit of a night and day kind of performance, and I want to talk about the second game in particular, not because they scored 4 goals, three in the first half, but just the overall look of how they did it. Is reasons to actually be pretty optimistic, and I think the final score was like 4-2. They did give up two cheap goals in the second half. The kind of the ceiling to this team is going to be the center back pairing that he's going to be able to find. I don't think Tim Ream is going to be able to be that guy, even though I don't understand why we keep giving him caps. So I'll kind of dig in a little bit into that. But the other thing is when you look at the pool or the kind of roster list of who else can be called up, you kind of there's a lot of unknown there. Now we do have Chris Richards that can be tapped in. He wasn't available. He could whether or not his best position is left or the right. I don't really know how much I believe in McKenzie. McKenzie was the other one that was tried alongside Ream. McKenzie didn't necessarily have a bad game, but you still don't necessarily know how proven he is, and also he did seem like he was sleeping at least on one of those Damari Gray goals. I didn't feel like McKenzie necessarily played his best in the first game either, but no one really did for the U.S. team. So we'll get into a little bit of that. I don't want to spend that much time because I do want to mostly focus on what happened the last time before the EPL had a break, because and it does feel like it was a really long time ago. But especially the Arsenal and Chelsea game, I want to speak a little bit about what happened the final 15 minutes or so of that game because it felt like Chelsea were really kind of the dominant team, to be honest. And then everything changed after Arteta made a couple changes. I don't even know if he meant to do it, but he honestly kind of I think he fumbled onto something that can maybe actually turn Arsenal's season around. We'll see if that pans out or not. There were a couple of changes. We saw a shape change, in my opinion, that completely we hadn't seen that before. And again, I don't necessarily know if it was just kind of a one-off. That'll be something that I'll think I'll be watching as this next weekend kicks off. So before that, the storylines even before that one, we had Bogey Weekend. Oh, I kind of labeled it as Bogey Weekend. So you had Brentford and Fulham going at each other. They've been kind of mini rivals since their times in the Championship, both London clubs as well. And that game ended up getting being quite delivered quite a good return, as well as Brentford got off with a unbelievable hit by Vitaly Yanelt, but then Brentford were really just sitting back and just kind of defending for their lives, as they say. Fulham were all over them. Fulham were a really good side, to be honest, and Fulham's pressure eventually eventually broke through with Harry Wilson got a very late goal after he came off the bench, where there was a ball sent in. It might have even been by Adama Traore, and Adama isn't even starting anymore. And he just got some kind of flick that he was like spinning when he got the flick. But he got the luck to go in, and then he was on the end of a header after that. So Harry Wilson, kind of the hero, getting 2 goals in like the final, really in stoppage time. So kind of heartbreak a little bit for Brentford, but it did feel like Fulham at the minimum deserved at least a point in that game. Brentford really could not keep the ball at all. They really couldn't. Just again, Fulham's pressure. Just Fulham will be really good at getting Brentford to go long, getting Brentford to turn it over, and Fulham were just living in that area. There's a lot of really, really good, desperate defending by Brentford that game. I believe Nathan Collins was having just loads and loads of blocks and interceptions, but it wasn't enough. Though we did see Brentford was able to bounce back, and I'll get to that later on. And then Liverpool and Brighton. Brighton gave them a scare, and Brighton have been giving Liverpool scares since going back to the Graham Potter times. So that wasn't that surprising. Brighton were able to get an early goal by Kaladoglu, and then Liverpool were able to get two back in the second half. Man United and Chelsea have been kind of at each other's throats for a long time. It's kind of an underrated rivalry a little bit, but this game itself was a bit of a snooze fest. It ends 1-1. Not a ton to really talk about, but that said, we did see something different. We did see something different from Rude Ruud van Nistelrooy as Kate take holder. Actually, it seems Man United do well when they have a take holder, playing with Chelsea. I'm thinking back to when Michael Carrick was managing them after they let Ole go. And one thing that to talk about is Chelsea have been quite good at making teams kind of foolish a little bit out of possession. And you normally think about Man United and how open that they have just been for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 seasons in a row. Man United were actually quite compact, and for the most part, this wasn't necessarily a back and forth kind of open kind of game. It was very cagey, and if you're a Man United fan, that weirdly is probably a positive. And I thought he didn't necessarily have the best stat line because he was losing the ball a lot, but I did feel Manuel Ugarte being inserted into the squad actually did change some of that. And then we actually really saw the return versus Leicester City a week later. Now, again, lesser competition. But if you're a Man United fan, you need something to hold on to, and at least that does. And now you've got the Ruben Amorim showtime that it is about to kick off, and I believe his first game in charge will be this coming weekend. And then Arsenal and Newcastle also win at each other, and they've been kind of at each other's throats for a little bit. Newcastle were a team a couple seasons ago that was able to keep Arsenal out of the Champions League. And then I just think back to last year. I think it was also the game at Newcastle when there was a rage fest over a goal that Arsenal fans thought should have been disallowed. It wasn't. That was a game when Arsenal fans thought Bruno Guimaraes should have been sent off for a couple of fouls that they thought he was getting away with. And then, lo and behold, Arsenal fans were raging again, but for a different reason, as they do go on to lose again. And this game was really, really not good. I mean, if you are an Arsenal fan, Newcastle fans aren't going to care how it looks. But Arsenal, and we did see a bit of a change from Eddie Howe. We saw some familiar faces that we hadn't seen. We saw Joe Willock back in the squad, former Arsenal players as well. We saw Sean Longstaff back in the squad, and we saw Anthony Gordon try it on the right side, and Anthony Gordon has the cross on the right side that leads to their goal, scored by Isak. And the kind of the talking point of this game was, okay, Arsenal are down a goal, still have a whole half to play. I don't really know if they even made Nick Pope having to make a save in that second half. They were so lifeless, and they weren't necessarily good versus Chelsea, at least in that opening 60-ish minutes or so. But things did change, I think, for the better. We'll see if Arteta, sticks to that blueprint or not. There were, and I kind of alluded to that. I'm about to get to that, and then Man City and Bournemouth, and Iriola's Bournemouth. Gave Man City fits last season, and it's weird to say that because one of the goals was 6-1, I believe, back in November, and that was what I thought he might actually be the first manager to go. And I'm really glad I didn't stake a claim necessarily on that or put any money on that because that has looked like to be a terrible decision. But Bournemouth really were struggling last fall to kind of get too used to his ideas and credit to their ownership group and whatnot. They stuck with him. They picked him out of nowhere, and they really have installed belief in him, and they've been vastly rewarded with it. And Bournemouth were able to, but after that 6-0, whatever it was in November, they turned around in February, and I think Man City only won 1-0, and it was a kind of a dogfight game, and it was when Man City were scoring goals for fun. They had gotten Kevin De Bruyne back. They had gotten Haaland going again. That was when John Stones was just kind of playing everywhere when he had returned. And Man City all of a sudden went to Bournemouth and they kind of hit a rock. They still won the game, but it was one of those where they actually really did struggle there, and they go into Bournemouth again, and they also struggle. And I do think it is a bit of a wake up call. And we just saw what they did versus Brighton. I think it's the first time that they said Pep has lost 4 games in a row. That is not something he does because he also lost in the Champions League to Ruben Amorim. Funny enough, I thought it was kind of wild to see him even coaching, but he was. Some Man United fans have something to at least kind of hold on, at least until they actually meet club by club. But uh, I do think that it's a wake up call a little bit for City because there's a trend now. The reason why they're losing is similar in every single game, and even the games that they were winning. You think back to Fulham, you think back to Wolves, even Southampton. Southampton was a little bit different, but Southampton was able to just really kind of pass around Man City where they weren't really able to press them into mistakes at all. We saw Fulham being able to do that in the second half almost a month ago. That was before the first international window. And then we've seen teams being able to get at them on the counter. And at least in this game, one player to really call out was Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker back into the squad. They tried Rico Lewis on the left. They played Gvardiol, I believe, at center back. And what the problem now is whether or not he's fit or not, maybe that could be a thing, but Kyle Walker has lost his ability to be miraculous in recovery. And you don't have Rodri anymore in midfield to win those duels or to kind of close danger out either. And it seems like teams are able to go at City without that fear factor. So Man City are also missing some key pieces on the as far as on the wing side. They don't have Grealish, they don't have Doku at the minute. They're missing. Kevin De Bruyne has only just returned, and so there's been just kind of a collective kind of just unknown a little bit for Man City at the minute. They're trying to play Kovacic in a role that he's not really used to. They're trying to fit Gundogan next to him, and Gundogan and Rodri worked. Gundogan and Kovacic hasn't, and so there's a lot of players all of a sudden you look at, and they're not able to win duels. They're not necessarily athletic enough. They're not good enough in possession either. You can press them into mistakes, especially the back line. And so this Bournemouth were a team that really went at Man City, and they were rewarded with it. And then we saw Brighton basically able to do the same when Carlos Baleba came on in the second half, and I'll get to that game coming up soon as well. And then the finally kind of end off, we had Spurs and Villa. Though both had kind of been in the same clubs fighting for the same kind of final Champions League spot the last couple of seasons. And that was a game that Villa had the lead at halftime, and it didn't really make sense why. To be honest, Spurs did feel like they were the better team, and eventually that ended up showing up. But there was a change that happened really for both sides. Villa ended up getting a couple of injuries. I believe one of them was to Matty Cash, so they moved Konsa over, and then Spurs did bring on a couple subs as well, and they kind of boat raced Villa in the second half a little bit to win. I believe it was 4-1. Couple goals by Solanke to finally get going. You're wondering, would that actually get Spurs season really get going, because they've been kind of hit and miss. They've had a couple good weeks and then kind of had a setback, and we just saw what happened versus Ipswich was really the Spurs season in its entirety. But they've been battling injuries already. No Van de Ven already, and really, it's in the Villa game they lost with Charleston. They hadn't really had him the entire season. Then he comes on. He is responsible for one of the big goals for Dominic Solanke to set him up, and he ends up doing his hamstring. So it comes at a massive cost. And now you're starting to wonder. You're starting to kind of look at this side, and it just looks, to me, it looks imbalanced. I've talked about that a little bit before with the way that they do. The way they've been trying to do the midfield. Ange Postecoglou does not know or doesn't feel comfortable having to play Madison and Kulusevski together anymore. He's trying to fit Brennan Johnson on the wing side, and Brennan Johnson's had a really good stretch, that really good stretch back in October and September. But at the same time, he offers you lots of runs, lots of work rate, but he doesn't necessarily always track his runner. We saw that a little bit, happening versus Ipswich, where that became a problem. And two, it's just when he's not able to get into space, when maybe there isn't necessarily when he has to maybe basically either beat his man or when he doesn't get in the box and he doesn't actually score, they're actually hurting a little bit there. I actually feel like you could probably play Kulishevsky there instead. Now you're not going to have nearly the forward running that he offers, but with Son back, you can get that from the other side. Anyway, Solanke can make runs into channels if you need to. I just feel like that makes him a little bit more balanced, and that way you could actually play Madison in his preferred 10 role. And I do feel like they've been missing some of that. But they lose to Ipswich after this Villa game, and they also lost in the Champions League window as well. So that is kind of the recap. And the table right now is bonkers. And I think 19 points right now is in third place, and I think it's Arsenal and Chelsea tied. 13th place is Man United on 15 points. That's just 4 points off. That is not. I think even there's someone even maybe tied with Man United, or like a bunch of teams that are tied with Man United there. I think Brentford, I think is close to that, or maybe Brentford's on 14 in 14th place. And you just I can't remember the table being this bunched together. In the past, I've argued there've been like four tables, so four different like kind of leagues. You've had the Champions League kind of, or the Europa kind of basically table, and then you've had everyone just kind of trying to get to the rest of like the top 10, and then you've had basically between the top 10 to I don't know 15 or so. That's usually kind of been bunched together, and then you've had the sides fighting for relegation. I can't remember this many sides being so close basically between 13th and 14th, for 13th and basically, third or fourth place, because all it takes is basically two bad weeks, and all of a sudden you go from a Champions League spot to there. It is early in the season, but I just can't remember that much parity, I guess you can say, or competitive balance. So we get to the international break now, and like I said, the results are a little mixed. I don't want to spend that much time on this, but I do want to talk a little bit what happened in the second game. So the first game, like I said, USA won, Jamaica nil. We scored in the first 5 minutes. We actually looked quite good in that opening 10-ish minutes or so. I thought we were moving the ball quite well, but then Johnny gets an injury. Johnny Cardozo gets an injury. Malik Tillman has to come on, and it just feels like that just changed everyone's kind of role a little bit in the side, and we could not save the ball to save our lives. We really did kind of eke this out. Uh, Jamaica were able to get in behind. Matt Turner goes to ground. There's a PK call, but then Turner is able to make the save. And then in the second half, Ream, I thought, got lucky with a little bit of a chicken arm sticking it out, where he was able to block a shot that seemed to be maybe on goal. We did not look good in that second half. Now, the field conditions were terrible. If you play golf, you know the term of a divot. There were divots everywhere. It was very, very, I guess, soggy and wet. I don't know if it was raining, during the game, or maybe it was raining, beforehand, or earlier that night. But it didn't. The field didn't drench at all, and it was just very, very cloppy. It was hard to play passes to feet. It was hard to control anything, and basically, it felt like Jamaica just decided to press us really high. They had their two center backs basically at our halfway line, and we had no ability to play over the top of them. Pulisic wasn't able to beat his man and get him behind. We were playing Musa on the other wing. We didn't have Tim Weah this game. We weren't able to get Pepe in behind outside the goal that he scored, and it wasn't great. So it was very, very a little bit unnerving. I did a little bit of a rant after that game, thinking I haven't necessarily seen what he's brought. Pochettino, it wasn't necessarily going at Pochettino, but just saying hadn't necessarily seen new ideas yet, or new ideas that were good or that were working. Musa being played on the wing was a new idea. We have seen a couple different people tried at the striker spot. We've seen Brandon Vasquez. We've seen like we saw versus Mexico. We've seen Pepe. We've seen Jar Sargent. None of that was really working. Pepe did get on the score here, but again, we weren't really able. We weren't a cohesive unit, I guess you can say. And so you came into the second game, you didn't know what to expect. Jamaica had some issues, though. Mikel Antonio was suspended for the first game. He was supposed to be able to play for the second game, Mikel Antonio on Wolves, on West Ham. And he had a passport issue. So he wasn't able to play. Ethan Pinnock of Brentford apparently was not able to suit for Jamaica either. Though it's still, you didn't really know what to expect coming into this. Now, there is something to say about away games in CONCACAF. We just have not been good for a very long time. I think back to a couple of years ago with Berhalter. we had a semifinal game or some kind of knockout game with Jamaica as well, and we needed a very late we needed to score on a very late corner kick just to get into extra time to beat Jamaica a couple of years ago. So this is a team that has given us fits a little bit before, but so you didn't really know what to expect in that second game. And not only did we not know what to expect, I don't think anyone would have expected this. Maybe would have thought maybe well we can score a couple of goals versus the back line didn't necessarily seem like it was that many that established. They do have a pretty good keeper in Andre Blake, but it did feel like maybe the U.S. can get a couple counters. Maybe they get up maybe they can collapse or maybe they can benefit from a couple of mistakes. But I don't think anyone would have expected the type of soccer, the fluidity, the different movement, the positional differences, the geometry. The word I'm going to say a lot is geometry because when you're watching this, you're seeing little triangles pop up everywhere, or you're seeing box squares, box four, everywhere in the field, and you're seeing combinations everywhere. And I have not seen the U.S. play this way maybe ever. And I don't want to overreact. Now, being pretty on the eye doesn't always lead to wins because one of the reasons why we were pretty on the eye is a lot of people had license to go wherever the hell they wanted. And that there are two things to that. One, you can have Anthony Robinson either starting in midfield, so as a fullback, starting in midfield, he has license to still make runs either centrally or like we saw, like I guess instead of underlap runs, or you can still make him go out wide, and he was doing that. But if you lose the ball, if one of those pretty passes, if someone has a bad touch and it doesn't, because we were doing a lot of one touch stuff. If not everyone is on the same page, is a turnover. You've got Tim Ream that has to defend a whole lot of space behind him without a whole lot of help. That was kind of what Berhalter was doing, but he was what we were doing with Berhalter is we would have Robinson make a bombing run up the wing, and then he would cross it in to no one. And a cross is significantly more likely to lead to a turnover than necessarily trying to build up necessarily. Uh, so there's give and take. It's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of reward by doing this, and you can also control the game a little bit by doing this. And so we boat race them. Pulisic gets an early goal, and then he does a celebration that people were talking about. I don't really want to talk about it, so I'm not. Then we have an own goal. There's one of those cases where Pulisic gets on the end of it, but the shot was kind of a miss hit. It's probably not going to be not going to lead to anything. It's probably going to be a comfortable save, but just trying the shot, just sometimes you do get lucky in that situation. But the way that goal came from was beautiful. We've got possession. Like I said, we're building around for fun. Jamaica are just kind of laying off because they don't feel like they can press us into mistakes. They feel like we're going to be okay. Ball gets to Matt Turner, then plays it in to Jonas Musa. It actually looks like a very scary pass, but Musa does amazing to collect it, and he's able to one touch it to Tasman. Tasman is another player that we hadn't necessarily seen get a couple call ups yet. He played in the first game, and then he was able to play in this game. And I think he was played or he was on the Olympic team, and we didn't necessarily see him. And Tasman had a pretty good game as well. He didn't necessarily do a whole lot of flash, but you just see just a little kind of little understanding and a good. He was a good partnership for Musa, playing in this role, or sometimes it was McKennie. I still don't really know who was playing in that holder spot because it seemed like Musa and McKennie were switching off. And that's another thing that I talk about too. Like a lot of players had license to have a free role in a sense, as long as everyone in the team understood. If one person goes forward, maybe the other one needs to hold back, or kind of vice versa. And so it's not like we were disorganized. It's just people did not have set positions, I guess is what I can say. But for the second goal, Musa gets the ball, and he's played it into an area where, someone that takes a heavy touch here, it's going to be a turnover. It's possibly going to be a goal because it's not the best place to turn the ball over. But he has a great head on him to he knows where his teammate, he passes it to Tasman. Tasman then one times it back, and then Musa plays upfield to, I think, McKennie. McKennie is making a run forward. And when McKennie gets onto the ball, then he has runners joining him, and it's Tasman. Tasman makes that run from deep, and he's joined. And Tessman can probably do something when he's played the ball, but he actually, maybe he hears a shot from Pulisic, or maybe he just knows Pulisic is running behind him. He leaves it for Christian Pulisic. And Pulisic in this game was not played on the left like we normally see. Pulisic had a free will himself. He was played, I'm going to say it's the number 10 position, but the number 10 position was not a central attacking midfielder. Pulisic was not really playing centrally. He was playing on the left channel, on the right channel. He was coming deep for the ball. He was everywhere. Now defensively, he's still kind of just uh, kind of standing around a little bit, but at least he was standing around and kind of blocking one of the entry plays into the middle. So this worked out. I actually feel like it's not. In my opinion, if everyone is fit, I would prefer Gio Reyna for this role. But I do feel like we're going to get to a very awkward situation where you don't really know what to do with him, because on the left side is where he likes cutting onto his right foot and likes scoring goals. For AC Milan, you've got Rafael Leao there. He's been able to make a name for himself playing a little bit on the right or playing in this cam role, and it seems like he is actually enjoying a little bit more of this freedom where he gets the ball in the middle of the field. He doesn't necessarily have to rely on beating someone for pace to get to the byline. He can actually find other ways to get off his shot, or to make runs, or to still be a goal scoring threat into the box, and so. Tasman leaves the ball, and then Pulisic kind of gets lucky there, and then Pepe is able to get the third. And what I like about the 3 goals here is the variety of how we're scoring. So the first goal comes from Weah gets the ball. I didn't even talk about the first goal. The first goal is where we Jamaica possibly have a chance to have their first attack. They actually look like they are able to get at least a shot going, but someone falls when the ball kind of arrives to him, and we really do benefit from that. We were able to. I think it's Pulisic that as well. He leads the counter. He doesn't really have the pace to get in behind anywhere, but he's able to just kind of advance it. Then he passes it to Weah, and then Weah one times it, switches it over to McKennie. McKennie has continued his run, and here is where the magic kind of happens, because Pepe is upfield. If you have a false 9 here, this goal doesn't happen. But Pepe is already upfield, where you want your number 9 kind of striker to be. And the reason why I say that is Pepe being up there is got the attention of the 2 Jamaican center backs, and they're both looking here now. And the way that when Pulisic is dribbling upfield before any of this happens, once he stops and passes it to Weah, the fullback is attracted to what Weah is about to do, because he doesn't really know. And then Weah, quickly, one times it to McKennie, but Weah ends up staying back, and the fullback on Jamaica ends up staying with Weah. And Pulisic just sees there's a little bit of an opening, there's a little bit of a gap here, and Pulisic makes that sprint, and McKennie sees that run. There's another thing that happens as well. Musa sprints to be ahead of McKennie as well, and what Musa does is Musa's run takes away a player as well. So McKennie has really no one on him, so he's able to look up. He's got his time. He's got his time to collect himself. He looks up, and he actually sees that opening. He sees that run that Pulisic make. It's a perfect way to ball, and then Pulisic's able to score with the finish. Great finish. To be fair to him, and then the way we score the third one is Pepe actually creates kind of a turnover just by himself. And then Robinson or whoever passes Pepe the ball, and then Pepe is able to find the corner. And then we score a beautiful goal with Tim Weah. Tim Weah, in my opinion, was one of the he doesn't necessarily have a lot of the hero remarks, at least in that first half. Everyone was talking about Pulisic, responsible for 2 of those goals. I think both Weah and McKennie were my 2 kind of MVPs, even though Pulisic was able to, had credit to 2 of those goals as well. But Weah offered something we just hadn't seen. The directness, just the ability to go both left and right. He had the fear of God in that Jamaica fullback, and we're finally able to. There's another kind of attack where Pulisic actually does pretty well to hold off the ball, because it looks like he's possibly about to lose it. He does well to at least hold up, and he's plays it out wide to Musa, and then Musa has a great cross into the box that Way is able to first collect, and then he has an unbelievable shot, and good, definitely deserving of it. It was also funny because Greg Berhalter was in attendance, and Tim Weah was possibly the reason why Greg Berhalter was fired, because Weah was the one that got the red card. Weah has been dramatically underappreciated in the squad, in my opinion. There's been, at least in online circles, people have been trying to do mock-up lineups where they haven't included him. And one thing that I've noticed, at least you noticed in the first game, you noticed it versus Mexico, you noticed it even in that Panama game, is without Weah in, we don't have, or especially without Balogun as well, we don't have that directness. We don't have that pace to get in behind that just the run itself creates things for others. We've been lacking that. And here, way back in the squad, I wasn't expecting him to play on the left side. I don't still necessarily know if we'll actually see it again. That could have just been a one-off, but it weirdly worked out, and wasn't in a way that I was expecting. Anthony Robinson, I figured that was maybe going to clash because you don't really think of Weah necessarily having having a having a left foot as well. So he's gonna maybe cut on to his right. How does Robinson was kind of played a little bit differently as well, and just it really did work out. And the one thing you're wondering is, who's going to play on the right side. That's been a thing that's been in people's minds as well. And here, I still don't really know what the answer is because it was a mix of Musa and McKennie. If you judge where the final ball came from both players, where some of the runs came from both players, both had a really good understanding to switch off on each other. And Musa and McKennie are not going to be people that actually, beat a man, beat a fullback 1v1 to create. But what they are going to do is they're going to offer some great width. They're going to offer you some runs, but they're also going to offer you some great work rate. And we shut that side down. To be honest. Now, Jamaica did get two back with Gray. We weren't necessarily great at tracking back in the second half. Scally had a chance to stop some danger, and he wasn't able to do that. And then the cross came in from the other side, from Robinson and Ream's side. It is what it is. I don't really care about the clean sheet. It's not necessarily like it's one of those aggregate things that mattered. We get some things to talk about here. The different lineup with Weah back, like Musa and McKennie kind of connection. Pulisic used differently. A midfield of Tessman and Musa, McKennie, or Robinson. I think the interesting thing as well is I talked about the shape of this team. The shape's changed in possession. But it did feel like we were building up with a back three, but the three people in the back were not always the same three. So probably the majority of it would have been Scally with McKenzie and Ream. But there'd be times when Robinson would be dropping back and be part of that, where Scally would be pushed up. There'd be times when Robinson would be in midfield, maybe Scally would be in midfield as well, and you would have Musa dropping back into one of those center back spots, and that would make up the back three. We always had three players back there, but it was never the same kind of players. And the interesting thing about this as well is you're using a back three to build up without three center backs. And this is the magic that I really like. And I saw this happen with Arsenal and Chelsea. Is I don't really love back three setups, especially with back three center backs, because I feel like it limits you elsewhere. But here, when you don't really have three center backs, you don't really know who's going to be that eventual other third player, because you're not using a third center back. You're not forcing that other center back to either try to play up further upfield where they're going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. So now that said, again, it's not easy to set up this way because you have to have players that are comfortable playing in different positions, and it feels like maybe this team is. And one thing you can say as well is I don't think we ever see anything like this if Greg Berhalter is still in charge, or if we get some other manager from I don't want to say the MLS, or attack the league, but it just feels like this is something that just I don't feel like we would have seen explored without someone else coming in. Now I don't even remember Pochettino doing this at Chelsea necessarily, but this was a lot of fun to watch, and just we were so inventive in our passing combinations. Like I said, we had triangles everywhere, and it did feel like, honestly, I feel like the shape for the most part was a 3-3-4. And with Anthony Robinson sometimes in midfield being part of that three. So you would have Robinson, Tasman, and a Musa. Or if Musa would be further upfield, it would be McKennie. And it would always be three. Sometimes Musa would be further upfield, and you would have McKennie dropping in. Sometimes you would have Pepe going out wide, and you would have actually McKennie and Pulisic kind of as the two false nines, essentially. You would always have Weah kind of being on the wing. So you still have a front four, and that's at least in possession or so. Out of possession, it was a traditional kind of 4-2-3-1 where Pepe would be just kind of up by himself pressing. And maybe you're not necessarily even going to get turnovers, even though we were able to score a goal this way. You had Pulisic always not really joining him, so it wasn't really a 4-4-2. It wasn't Pulisic next to him. Pulisic was staying deep. And at least his job is just kind of make it so if the ball does come in the middle, if it does come to Isaac Hayden or whoever else is playing in midfield, you can at least have someone there to kind of cut that out a little bit. The problem is when you have that number 10 player that joins the striker and you're able to get around that, and then because you have that space there. We weren't really falling for that, and our shape out of possession was quite good. Our shape in possession was quite good as well. So there were a lot of positives there. Also, Pepe back into the squad. He's gotten a chance with Balogun being out injured, and he took advantage of it with two nice goals over this little break. And then again, the way that the shapes and the triangles and whatnot, just the little passing combinations. One thing I haven't even talked about, we're taking a lot of risk here. We're not necessarily just going long to go long. When the run is on, we're going long, but we were trying a lot of through balls. We were trying a lot of line splitting passes. We have 90+% accuracy. So even if something square was on, we were passing it sideways and backwards as well. But it just felt like, again, I haven't seen the team play this way. Now, whether or not it was because Jamaica were not at their best, there could certainly be some of that. But hey, I'm not going to overreact. I'm just going to say we looked quite good. Well, now the bigger test will come later on. I think we drew Panama for the semifinal, and we did beat Panama just a couple windows ago. But Panama also just beat us in the Gold Cup, when the game that actually mattered. Now that was the game with the red cards. So, but anyways, there's more positives than not. Negatives, again, Reem. Reem, you can get at Reem when Robinson's out of possession. That's the same thing that was happening with Dest. I mean, with Berhalter. The back line is what it is. And unless even if Chris Richards comes in, I don't really know who you're going to play on the left if you're not going to trust Austin Trusty. So now that said, if the idea is going to try to be this kind of back three where the center back can also become almost a fullback when he goes wide. Austin Trusty was doing that for Sheffield, and I believe Austin Trusty has been playing well for Celtic. Austin Trusty was part of the team. He didn't get any minutes, but he was part of the bench. So maybe the idea is going to be him, Trusty, and maybe Richards when he gets back, or maybe Mark McKenzie. One thing I can say about McKenzie is he did look better than Miles Robinson. Robinson just did not look it at all versus Mexico last international window, and there's still people to bring in. There's still Serginho Dest that's missing, and I do feel like Dest will get his spot back because Scally isn't the best defending 1v1 in my opinion. At least defending ball carriers. There's still Balogun to offer. Balogun can either run on one of the channels or do you stick with Pepe? Pepe is a number 9, and what I mean by that is he's a finisher. Balogun maybe is more talented, but there's been times when Balogun hasn't necessarily finished some of these chances. Now that said, the cherry on the top would have been if Pepe had scored a second goal in this game, and there was one time when Musa or Pulisic or someone made a really good run up the wing, had to cut into the box, and it should have been a tap in. If nothing else, there should have been pretty good contact where something should have happened, and Pepe whipped. So there's some of that as well, but there's still Balogun, there's still Gio Reyna to feature in, and I feel like the way Pulisic's playing. You put Gio in that 10 spot, I'd like that a little bit more maybe, potentially, though Gio is not always fit, so who knows, and Captain America now is Pulisic, so you're not going to necessarily keep him out of the squad, but I'm a little bit down on him a little bit, and then he does the dance. I'm at a point where everyone wants to shut up and dribble, that's fine. I just I don't necessarily need to go there. Enough has already been said as is, and then you have Tyler Adams, and Johnny to possibly kind of add into this as well. So there's maybe some depth to come in. I do feel like we are a little bit weak on the wings because the same issue that was plaguing us before this window is still plaguing us. Following. If Tim Weah can't go, and you don't have those runs to create a whole lot of stuff for others, what else? Where was that going to come from? So We're reliant on Tim Weah. We're reliant on those runs, that directness, because when you can get a fullback isolated and you get a fullback that's going to lay off, that opens a whole lot of other options for other people. The other thing I liked is we had willing runners everywhere. When the to be a possession side, people don't really think about this, but to be a possession side, it feels like some people maybe think the idea is, oh, it saves energy in the legs because you have the ball. You're not always making lots of runs. You just side to side. It's safe. You're killing the game out. That's not always the case. If a team is trying to press you, you still need runners ahead of you. You need options ahead of you. Otherwise, you're just going to go, sideways and backwards, and eventually it's not going to work. You still need to have willing people to make runs off the ball. And we saw that. And that had been missing in a lot of games as well. So that is where we are with the USA roundup. And I will get started with Arsenal and Chelsea. And I'm probably going to spend the majority of my time talking about this game, mostly because of what happened in the second half. And then I'll probably skim a little bit what happens in the other games because I don't want this to be a 3-hour episode. So Arsenal and Chelsea. Arsenal do go. This does end up being a 1-1 draw. There was a lot of talk coming into this because of the poor showing versus Inter as well. Was this a must-win game? Because Arsenal were something like 9. They say 9 points. I don't know how far they are. I think it is 9. 9 points off Liverpool. I think it's 5 points off City. There was a lot of talk. Is this a must-win game? I don't necessarily know if it is. I would have preferred to see improvement, and I didn't see that until I saw the changes in the second half. Chelsea as well. You don't really know what to really think of them, but at the same time, this time a year ago, you wouldn't have. Everyone would have said Arsenal and Man City, maybe Liverpool, for kind of the the title, the top three. Now you look into we're almost getting into December somewhat, and Chelsea is tied with Arsenal on points. I don't think anyone would have seen that coming. Chelsea had a fantastic end to their season last year, and then they fire their coach. They bring someone else in, and Chelsea have also spent $1 billion. So it's not all worth praising. I mean, you've got more players than anyone else. You should actually be around here. I still don't really know what to think of them though, and probably one of their ceilings is what showed up a little bit in the second half, and it is the person in goal for them, which is kind of weird to say because they haven't necessarily been that bad in defense. But it feels like people have been able to go with Sanchez to get him to go long, and when you get Chelsea to go long, that is when you get them to turn it over that way. That is actually when you can kind of get at them a little bit. I thought I saw Liverpool attack Chelsea in the same way with Darwin Núñez. Felt like Arsenal figured out they could do the same thing. Getting Havertz kind of running them. It's just kind of token pressure, but he's just he can't handle it, and he's going long. He's not good with the ball at his feet. And I'm looking at the game differently now. If you don't have so many of these kind of elite, I don't want to say elite, these like kind of top tier kind of games where there's not a lot separating between the two. Everyone is pretty decent at keeping the ball, pretty good at handling pressure. The one kind of thing that separates them is who has a keeper that can keep the ball when under pressure, that can find teammates, not just going side to side, that can actually pick those mid-range patches as well, that can actually be a weapon for you. Arsenal went out and bought David Raya for that reason, and it came a little bit at a kind of social, I'm gonna say social cost. They got a hit for it because they benched their England's kind of rising sun in Ramsdale, and there was a lot of controversy when it happened. And just a year later, you look, Ramsdale's kind of struggling a little bit now with Southampton. Now, Ramsdale's still a good keeper, but it just feels like he was maybe elevated a little bit too early. And Arteta brought Raya in, and it wasn't necessarily the most popular decision. And Raya in the beginning didn't have necessarily the best beginning of it, but you really are starting to see where that benefit comes from. And you saw it a little bit in this game because the second half, I thought the difference was there. Chelsea could not get Raya to turn it over. Arsenal could get Sanchez. But at that said, it is still a 1-1 game, and close call for Trossard at the end, close call for Trossard and Havertz in the second half. So kind of going to it. The other talking point going into this was Arsenal finally got Martin Odegaard back, and man, have they missed him. He was able to get a couple minutes to get his legs fresh versus Inter Milan. Only got 5 minute run out. Didn't really understand why you even did that, other than to signal, hey, he's now good to return. And with his inclusion in the squad, this is a entirely different Arsenal team, and you saw it really for the goal that Martinelli scored, but you also saw it in the creation that happened in the second half as well. This was finally the Arsenal team that people were expecting to see. Arteta has not been able to find that creation elsewhere with Odegaard out of the team, and now you have him back in. All of a sudden, you just have someone that just knows how to not only beat by a man, someone that knows how to be just so silky on the ball in tight areas, someone that knows how to do these combinations plays, knows how to just draw so much attention onto him that sometimes you can drag four eyes onto you that you can slip someone in behind, like we saw with Martinelli, and that's actually how they get their goal. But Odegaard also created a whole lot of options, a lot of opportunities in that second half as well. We get to the lineup. It was White, Saliba, Gabriel, Timber. Not really any surprises there. Calafiori, I believe, is close to returning, and I think Ben White actually just suffered an injury, so we might actually see Timber at right back when we return. Maybe Calafiori back at left back. And if that is the case, that is the best back line in my opinion. That with Party and Rice, I still don't really know what to do with Rice. Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli, Havertz. That is a team that I think can actually push for a title. If they're able to do that, if they're able to stay healthy, that to me is and we'll get to that. Why would I think that? Because of what I saw in that second half. Now the only kind of fix there is there's a player that Arteta brought on in the second half that is not part of this, and it is Mikel Merino, and he came on for Rice. Now you're not going to take Rice out of the 11, but maybe you can find a way to share the minutes a little bit, because what Marino does is he recognizes when to make these kind of runs ahead into the box. And you saw it for two of Arsenal's best chances in that second half, where he makes a little late run into the box and he nearly scores a tap in. I believe it's across from Trossard. And he very nearly gets on the end or he very nearly plays Havertz in on goal after Odegaard finds him or Saka crosses him the ball. He wins the header to knock it down because he's also quite tall and big in the air. It just feels like he has a better understanding of when to time his runs, when to just kind of be an extra number that Rice to me has not shown he can do. Like, this was the first time where I saw this was what Granit Xhaka was offering Arsenal a few seasons ago, and you finally got it back with Mikel Merino. But the other thing that was happening was Thomas Partey was being a conductor in that second half, and what was happening is you saw the shape of Arsenal fully change. And I talked about that 3-3-4 with with a US men's national team. I saw that same formation, that same shape tried with Arsenal in that second half, where Thomas Partey dropped. He was coming into kind of that center back role, and he was making a back three with Saliba and Gabriel stretched out wide. Saliba is very good defending out wide. Gabriel is as well, and they were just giving the ball to Partey as many times as possible. And Chelsea were not able to. This was maybe where Chelsea lost the game. Chelsea did not understand that if you maybe not put two guys on Thomas Partey, maybe this doesn't happen. Maybe that's actually the way to kind of stop this. But they were giving Partey the ball, and he was conducting. He was conducting from deep, and you had Timber and you had White pushed up, and they were basically forming a midfield three with Mikel Merino, not Declan Rice. And then you had basically the four. You had Odegaard and Havertz is almost like your two false nines, and then you had the width from Saka and Martinelli. When Saka went off, you had Gabriel Jesus and you had Trossard instead of Martinelli. But you saw a different shape than we had seen from Arsenal, and you saw Chelsea had no ability to really get the ball back. They couldn't press Arsenal into mistakes. There was loads of combinations. There was loads of just the possession, the chances, everything flipped after that change. And I am wondering, was that just a one-off? Or is Arteta thinking about that going forward? And if he is, does that shape become kind of the dominant shape going forward? Because Chelsea have basically played with a back three themselves with the way that they try to play Mark Cucurella. They push Gusto either into midfield. They try to do kind of something similar. They have a back four, and then they kind of shift it a little bit. But the shape did not necessarily look like this. But that is praising Arsenal for a 1-1 draw, and it's not it's not all fun and glory for Arsenal fans. Not just for the point. Uh, the performance in the first half was not good. Chelsea's shape was actually really frustrating Arsenal because the shape that I described was not how they were playing in the first half. Arsenal almost had a 4-2-4 shape, almost what Liverpool had been playing. And the game note I have here is Arsenal start really sluggish. Chelsea's shape is giving them fits. So again, it did feel like maybe Arsenal tried to copy what Liverpool did versus Chelsea a couple of weeks ago. You have Odegaard and Havertz being really high up. You have Martinelli and Saka that are kind of pinching a little bit to close in the middle spaces, but it's not working. So you have Havertz and Odegaard both trying to press and trying to mark kind of the center back on the ball, but they're also trying to stop the passing lanes into Lavia and Caicedo. They're trying to be in front of them. And it felt like the danger that Arsenal thought was the danger of those two getting on the ball, which makes sense to me. But what was happening in that first half was Cole Palmer and Marlo Gusto. Marlo Gusto was almost playing in midfield, and they were playing almost like double tens, and they were finding ways to sneak out wide or to sneak in behind or around or around or kind of out wide of Arsenal's Thomas Partey or Rice to receive the ball. So yeah, you're stopping that progression from the middle, but when you look at it on the field, a 4 and then a 2, a 4, there's little space on the sidelines, and Cole Palmer was running to get the ball there, as was Marlo Gusto, and Arsenal were not able. Thomas Partey couldn't cover that kind of ground, and what was happening more times than not is Marlo Gusto was almost kind of a decoy. He was going out wide, and what that was doing is that was taking Declan Rice to almost follow him, and you're moving Declan Rice away from the middle of the field, and so that was creating another problem as well. And by doing that, Thomas Partey was not able to handle Cole Palmer by himself. And so by getting Declan Rice away from Thomas Partey, Chelsea were able to get around Thomas Partey a little bit and able to go at him. And they were getting some chances by doing this. So it was quite a good move by Chelsea to do this. And I do feel like the one kind of negative a little bit to Chelsea's kind of playing Gusto this way or playing Cucurella in the way that they were using him as almost like a third center back is it allows you to have control in the game because you maybe a numerical advantage. You got the Spock 4 kind of shape. You've got sometimes Jackson drops in, he turns into 5 players that 5 versus 4 or however the numbers work. But the interesting thing here is you still don't have the overloads out wide nearly as much as you would like, but it doesn't matter because we are seeing Jackson to me is being way a little bit isolated. So another thing we were seeing is Jackson's role was kind of different as well. So you have Arsenal have the 2 center backs. It's hard to get behind them. So you understand that. So Chelsea kind of dropping Jackson a little bit in the midfield to run away from Saliba and Gabriel. And I do feel like this maybe would have been a little bit more effective if Jackson was better at running to the ball to have his first touch because his first touch was too heavy and Chelsea were losing the ball too many times that way. But the other thing I think was given fits was Ben White did have to defend Pedro Neto 1v1 and he couldn't do it. He couldn't stop him. And they were whipping dangerous crosses time after time into the box. Chelsea probably should have scored on one of these. I mean, the Chelsea had something like 75% possession that first 12 minutes, and we start to see chances come out of that. So first, Parma has a pass to Gusto, shots blocked just 4 minutes in, but here, Chelsea moving the ball slow. It comes from the right side of the field. Fofana is able to Fofana to Colwell, and then you see they quickly play up the left side, playing a ball that goes through Saka past Partey to find Palmer, who can receive it, turns upfield with it, gets a shot off. Side to side stuff isn't always a negative. Because side to side, if you can manipulate a team to go from one side of the field to move over to the other, the ball's faster than a player can run, and so Chelsea are quick to do a switch to get the ball on the other side of the field, and they're not able to switch. Arsenal are able to rotate in time. Partey is just a little bit out of position, and they're able to slip Palmer in behind him, and that leads to a chance. We also have a chance where Palmer has a shot from range. Raya saves it, but pretty decent shot on power. If it's hit anywhere else, it maybe is going to trouble Raya. But that really is the only chance that Chelsea even had on target. Chelsea had a lot of chances, and they just weren't able to actually get anything on goal. If some of this was on goal, they probably would have scored 2 goals here. So we have the Neto cross. Madueke misses the header. Uh, this comes from Palmer being able to receive the ball under pressure. He turns upfield away from Party again. Palmer, though, maybe messes up here because once he gets the ball and once he turns, he's got he ends up basically playing out wide to Neto. But he's got Jackson making a run, splitting Saliba and Gabriel. If Palmer plays that ball instead, I think he's in on goal. He doesn't. He plays it safe, goes out wide, goes to Neto. Neto has a cross. Ben White can't stop the cross off. It's a great cross, and Neto Eke probably should have put it on goal. And then we have another cross where we have a Gusto header here, and it's just something he misses high. But this is the problem, though. You're playing a right back in midfield, and the only way to make this work is eventually, or basically, you're playing him as a double 10. Eventually, he's got to make a run into the box, and eventually, he's got to actually do something when he gets into the box, when it is played to him. It's a back post header. There's no one really marking him. He's got to do better than what he does. So you have 2 free headers here, and the Gusto one, I think, is the one that's got to be troubling for Chelsea because I saw this when I was watching the Liverpool game versus Chelsea a couple weeks ago. I figured the way that Chelsea are playing Malo Gusto, he's the one you actually want to try to game plan for. Give him the ball. He hasn't shown you it's going to hurt you. You don't want, or you could actually even allow Lavia or Caicedo because he's playing two pivots to have the ball. There's not any danger there. Just, that allows you to double mark Palmer. That allows you to maybe focus a little bit more on Neto, who's more dangerous, or maybe Madueke or Jackson. You don't really have that extra option that when the ball is played to him, where it's actually going to be a threat. And so that is the kind of the give and take a little bit here. Chelsea are trying to use players in different positions, and it's allowing them to control games, but it's not really allowing them to hurt teams in the way that obviously that they would want. So there's that. I mentioned how Chelsea did start strong, but we get to like the 20th minute or so, and Arsenal then start some problems with their goal kicks or restarts. So it feels like they can pressure Sanchez and Colwell into mistakes, and they're right. Colwell had an up and down game. He had a decent job defending, some nice balls played. There was a chance where it looked like Havertz was going to get behind. Colwell did well to stop that out, but he also had a couple. I think he had the pass that actually led to the Neto goal later on. So a couple decent stuff there, but he also had some errors that Arsenal were able to break on, and Chelsea weren't able to nearly turn Arsenal over nearly as much. So we have the chance here. And it requires the first save that Sanchez needs to make saving. Sanchez is a good keeper at making saves. It's the other stuff. So it comes from Colwell, plays a really poor pass to Palmer. Saka intercepts. Saka then is brought down, but he finds Martinelli in the box. Pretty good shot. Maybe Martinelli could have done better, but he does do better later on down. And then we have Arsenal actually scoring, but Havertz returning to Stamford Bridge. That was a story coming into this as well, but it is offsides. But to this point, we hadn't seen much of Odegaard, but here he collects the ball under pressure, finds Saka. Saka then draws the foul on Lavia and Cucurella. Declan Rice is on the ball. I still don't really understand why you have Declan Rice taking your free kicks, but he is cheeky here. He takes the free kick early. Havertz is free, and he puts the ball in behind Sanchez, but he is just a fraction ahead of the last defender. But the foul came after Arsenal forced Sanchez to put the ball long again, where Saliba beats Jackson to a 50-50 header. You go long, and the way Arsenal plays such a high line, it's going to be really hard to win 50-50 duels between Saliba and Gabriel when they're contesting those headers, especially versus Lavia or versus Caicedo, or even Jackson's quite tall himself, but he's only just one person, and it just felt like that was happening a lot of times too. And then we get to the 35th mark. Arsenal shape does change, so it's either Havertz or it's Odegaard putting pressure on the center back, not both. So it's you leaving that extra player to block those passes into midfield, and I do feel like they recognized Rice and Party needed someone to help them out. They finally did make that change, and so halftime thoughts was it's evenish game, but only because of those changes after the 30th minute mark. Chelsea probably were regretting not taking an advantage, and then we have another Chelsea chance in the second half. Fofana nearly gets on the end of a Madueke cross. We're 55 minutes in, though, and basically both teams only have one shot on goal, one apiece, basically. And then we get to the goal. So we finally get a situation where again it's forcing Sanchez to struggle under pressure. Chelsea don't play. Don't or Chelsea do try to play it out, but Palmer gets on the ball on the sideline where he can't really do much with it. Plays it, passes it back. It basically passes it into a trap. Odegaard picks the ball off Lavia. I'm going to pause it for just a second. All right, so when Palmer gets the ball, he can't really do much with it. He passes it into a trap basically, and Odegaard picks him off. And Havertz and Party then do well to really advance the ball upfield. They retain it. So with pretty good ball retention from both here. Odegaard then gets on the ball and he draws 4 players onto him, and this is where you see the magic kind of happen. But you see his head looking up when he's got the ball at his feet, and just it's such a small thing, but a lot of players, in my opinion, even at this level, still have their head down when they have the ball at their feet. And when your head is down, maybe you have that sixth sense or whatever, but Martin Odegaard is dribbling and beating players, but he's also looking up when he's doing it. I see Darwin Núñez he has his head down, he looks down. I feel like Martinelli when he gets the ball would be another when he has his head in the box. He's looking down. It's not the same thing, and because Odegaard is able to have his head up, he sees Martinelli is open in behind. There's absolutely no one marking him. Neto hasn't been able to run back, or it's Madueke. Madueke hasn't sprint back to help out, and he gets the ball and then he's able to beat Sanchez from the tight angle. Now I said Sanchez is normally a pretty good keeper, probably could have done better on this goal, but it is what it is. I do feel like Chelsea are playing that midfield of when Chelsea have the ball with Malo Gusto like higher up, but he has to run back and play fullback in defense. And when he finally is able to run back to mark Rice, there's really no one to mark Martinelli behind Gusto, and Madueke doesn't track back. So it costs them. But they are able to get one back with Neto. It's another player that Arsenal were actually trying, long link to. So, my brother was upset a little bit about that. Comes off a recycled corner kick. So Enzo has since come on, and he does well to keep hold of the ball. He plays it in, plays in Neto's run that splits Havertz and Martinelli. So it's Enzo, not Colwell. It's a brilliant run. Neto just kind of gets it. He comes from a central area since Neto has since kind of moved on to the other side. Madueke has come off. I think Mudrix is on at this point. And Neto just kind of, makes that run that splits. And then he's able to beat Raya from a pretty powerful shot from outside the box. And here you thought Chelsea was going to come out and win it after that. It felt like the momentum would have been on Chelsea's side. It's at Stamford Bridge. And then Chelsea just aren't able to really do anything after this. They're not able to press Arsenal into mistakes. And they feel like they lost control after this. Mourinho then comes on. Trossard comes on. And then Saka nearly finds Mourinho for a cross to score, so almost on his first play. Mourinho comes on for Rice. Now, they didn't even know if Rice was going to play. So I feel like the reason why the sub happened is because Rice was on a minutes restriction. Rice was apparently playing with a broken foot. Mourinho came in and he was better. Now, whether or not it's with Rice being hurt, but Mourinho, like I said, he times those runs in a way that I don't think Rice does. Rice recognizes, maybe eventually he will. But if you're not going to play Rice in that 6th role, you're going to play him a little further advanced. He's got to be able to understand moments when to do this. So we have another chance here where Mourinho makes a run into the box. Odegaard finds him. He heads it down to Havertz, and this is nearly reaches Havertz for a goal here as well. And then we start to see the magic happening with Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey is dropping deep into that back line for build-up. And you see it a lot in that second half, really the entire 15 minutes, where Arsenal relying hard on Thomas Partey to get the ball. Saliba and Gabriel, again, go wide. Partey centrally. Rice, or basically Marino, is now ahead of him. Havertz has kind of dropped a little bit into midfield, so you have Havertz and Odegaard. Again, it's like the kind of, false, two double nines or double false nines. And you have the two fullbacks that have, kind of inverted themselves in the midfield ahead. So again, it's that 3-3-4 kind of shape with White and Timber. And this shape gives Chelsea all sorts of fits. Enzo Fernandez has since come on, and Enzo Fernandez is almost like a traffic cone out of possession. And so that hurt them a little bit there. And then we do have the other thing that was happening is you're playing such a high line. There was a couple moments when Chelsea was able to get Jackson in behind. I think it's Cole Palmer, or actually I think it's Enzo Fernandez. He plays in Jackson, making a run in behind. It looks like Jackson's going to get there. and Raya actually comes out and he sweeper keeps. One thing to play a high line, he by doing that, there is some space to run in behind, even with Gabriel and Saliba. You know, Jackson's got some pretty good pace to him as well. And what we saw here was Raya having the license to come out and do what Manuel Neuer does or has done for Bayern Munich and Germany all those years. And the thing that to touch on here is it almost feels like Arteta told him to do this after that Bournemouth game, because probably the main reason why Saliba was sent off a few weeks back for Bournemouth was because Raya was in retreat mode. Raya wasn't immediately off his line, and so yeah, that maybe is a little bit harsh, but I just the reason why I want to touch on this was big because Raya did this a couple of times where he was anticipating when the ball was going to come out to him, and he had the athleticism to run out and stop this, because Chelsea actually had a chance on multiple times to maybe get in behind, and they probably would have been in on goal. So it's pretty good. You're playing such a high line, and you're doing that because you figure where the ball is going to be fought and won over is kind of at the halfway line, and you feel like you have more bodies there, you more chance to win the ball and keep it. But there is that chance to go over the top. But the other thing here is there was another moment when Partey did make a mistake where Gusto did read a pass. Jackson again, free run upfield, but no one was able to get into the box to join him. If Palmer makes a sprint to join him, the Chelsea probably get a counter goal as well. So the game is still kind of into the balance, but here is the thing where you start to see where the Thomas Partey taking over really does just kind of change things. He basically becomes the number one person getting the touches on the ball in the final 20 minutes. Anytime that Arsenal have the ball trying to build up, they're looking to get him the ball, whether or not it's even from the side or if it's the keeper. It was very weird how Chelsea did not figure, hey, put Jackson, Palmer, maybe even both, to mark him. Mark him out. Make Ben White, make Saliba, Gabriel, Moreno, make someone else having to make decisions. And they didn't. So that is where I think Chelsea ended up kind of losing control a little bit here. And again, the way Arsenal were able to retake control after Chelsea equalized, I feel like Thomas Partey was worthy of man of the match honors. And then we start to finally see a couple of those chances play out where Arsenal probably should have won the game. Gabriel Jesus has since come on to replace Saka. Arsenal get an overlap run. That's another thing that Arsenal hadn't been doing the entire game, because they're trying Ben White or they're trying Timber in the midfield. They're doing the same thing Chelsea is. What that means is when someone gets out wide, you're not going to be able to kind of overload that side unless you want Odegaard to maybe do that. So here, Gabriel Jesus, gets the ball. I believe it's maybe it is Marino. Someone makes an overlap run where Jesus is able to get in behind and he's played the ball. He gets to the byline. He has a cutback cross that nearly finds Marino, and it's actually a pretty good Sanchez save. This probably should have been a goal, but then the ball finds Trossard, and he's unable to put it back. He blasts it over. Now, it is coming to him quite quickly, but we've seen Trossard actually finish these before. This is one of those where it's instinctual. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. It's unlucky here, but I want to highlight that chance because it came from someone actually making an overload out wide to get in behind. We hadn't seen either Chelsea or Arsenal, even try this the entire game. And once Arsenal were able to actually do that a little bit, they were able to create a pretty good chance out of that. And then we get a final chance here with Saliba, of all people, makes a run upfield. He just continues running. He starts with the ball, and then basically they advance it upfield with Trossard, and then Saliba just basically unmarked, just kind of plays him in. Odegaard gets the ball basically in the box at the end of it, and he sees Saliba has continued his run, and he's completely unmarked. Chelsea here just, again, drawn to what Odegaard's doing and what Trossard's doing, and they leave Saliba completely unmarked, top of the box. Saliba is able to do everything right. He squares the ball into the box, and Trossard whiffs. Havertz is behind him as well. If Trossard lets it go, Havertz has a tap in. So Reece James has since come on. He completely lost Saliba. So nearly moments here, really for either team. So it did feel like neither team really probably should have won, but the way the final 5 minutes did, Arsenal fans are probably going to feel a little hard done by. Chelsea with 17 shots, only 3 on target. Arsenal with 13 and 3 as well. Arsenal's XG, though, because of how they finished the game, ended up kind of even. I think it's 1.5 apiece. It did not feel that way for like 70, 80 minutes or so. Chelsea were the better side with the chances they created in the first opening and the first, like I said, 70 minutes or so. Arsenal did have three big chances and two missed. Two ones or three missed, and two big ones coming late, as I mentioned. And the passing numbers were kind of low as well. 350 for Chelsea and 375 for Arsenal. Both sides are quite high at keeping the ball. Possession was 50-50 as well. But you think about how the Chelsea started the game, having almost 75 or even 80% possession. Arsenal did well to fight back. So that's a story a little bit as well. And we'll get started with Arsenal. It's not the 3 points that Arsenal or that Arteta was talking about. It doesn't get the headlines. It does have a little bit of a gap now. But you got Odegaard back. You got your main creator back. And I do feel like you found something a little bit with the way that you're dropping Thomas Partey to be a conductor. Now, can you rely on Thomas Partey for fitness? Maybe you can play Jorginho that way. Or the other thing too is, can teams figure out, hey, this is the guy that is getting the ball. This is the guy that is trustworthy where no one else is. What happens when you take him out? What happens when you actually put two guys on him? Can you make Marino, or can you make Rice when he's playing, or like I said, the center backs to make those decisions instead? If Calafiori comes back into the side and you have Timber, playing on the right, I do think they could still kind of do that. And that to me would be the most dangerous that Arsenal can be. And it feels like they're going to get that with Ben White actually being out injured for a little bit. And it does feel like if Calafiori can return back to fitness wise, Calafiori was quite a good player before he got hurt. I was thinking he was maybe signing of the season. There haven't been a lot of contenders, but it's not just him scoring that wonder goal versus Man City. Just Calafiori was quite good for them before he got hurt. So this is. If you can do that, all of a sudden Arsenal's passing and build up is more fluid. It's not just side to side. It's not just get the ball to Saka and Martinelli when they already have a team that's sitting off them. They already have basically a situation where you're forcing them to either beat a man or beat two by themselves. Maybe you can get some hopeful crosses in. Finally, you're not seeing an Arsenal fan that's just reliant on that, where the two best players are always out wide and they're always double teamed. It's always measured. It's always calculated. It's not about you're too afraid of playing something through lines because you're worried about losing the ball. You didn't see that in that final 20 minutes. You saw a very fluid, a very quick moving side, and that is the side that Arsenal were 2 or 3 seasons ago when Arteta, first kind of made a push versus Man City. Before last season, before that, Declan Rice. Now they also had different players. They had Zinchenko playing, they had Gabriel Jesus playing, and they had Granit Xhaka playing most of these roles. Then also maybe teams didn't know necessarily what Martinelli and Saka were always going to do. There could be some of that as well, but also we were one of the more enjoyable sides just to watch for the neutral, and they've since turned into being one of the worst. This final 20 minutes or so, that was back. So is that just a one-off or not? I actually feel like they've got the players to actually make this work. And the other thing to talk about here is, especially, I think they'll benefit by having Ben White not playing. Whether or not it's for injury, maybe he's been hurt anyways, so it's going to hurt for depth. But I just feel like Ben White wasn't offering Saka any kind of overlap around, any kind of help. Moving Timber over, I feel like he's better right back anyways. I don't feel like he offers a whole lot left back either. He's good with the ball at his feet, but here he can be way more dangerous if he is played at right back. So I just feel like you're gonna have an ability to be way more creative. You have Odegaard back. Man, have they missed him. You have Raya, sweeping keeping now. That looked a little bit different. Such a difference in between him and Sanchez as well. And again, just the way you're using Thomas Partey, I feel like you can use Jorginho this way as well. So you have two players that can do that. I don't think you can do Declan Rice this way. That's the only kind of negative. You have Trossard blowing his chances. One touch on Havertz. There is a moment in the second half where Havertz isn't just dropping for the ball. He isn't just looking for it. He isn't trying to be a midfielder. He's making a run off the shoulder of Colwell. He's going to get there. And it's Marino just nearly plays a perfect ball in behind. It's really good defending by Colwell. I want Arsenal to use Havertz that way. Now maybe not. as a Liverpool fan, maybe I want Arsenal to actually drop some points and a little bit more. But it just feels like, for my brother's sake, I guess I'll say it that way. Havertz can make these runs into channels. Havertz is never going to beat you in the box. He's not really quick, but he's 6'3" or whatever he is, and he's got a stride, and he can make runs into channels. He can actually get in behind if you play him that way. I think you got Odegaard back. He's gonna have an eye for that kind of pass. I think you've got Marino showing he has that ball in him. Partey knows that we know that Partey has that ball in him as well. That was another change that happened last season. You bring Declan Rice in. Thomas Partey wasn't able to play half the season. In fact, one of the reasons why Arsenal was able to kind of regroup themselves is they were asking Jorginho to play a lot last season. So you're finally having more creation in more directness. But it's not just directness to just kind of hoof it. It's intentional. And just again, Arsenal now have some. I think they have some reasons for belief, but we'll have to see if that pans out or not. And then one final thing to talk about is Gabriel Jesus. He's fit now, and he's still not playing. You also have Raheem Sterling, and Sterling still can't get games. Um, if you're not going to have Havertz run into channels, so talked about how Havertz can maybe do this, but if you're not going to have Havertz run into channels, and if you are going to really, really slowly build up play, uh, outside of some crosses, because Havertz can always be a threat in the air, Gabriel Jesus, when he's in the box, he's more creative, in my opinion. Sometimes Gabriel Jesus likes dropping way too much for the ball. Gabriel Jesus, though, is quite good at holding on to the ball as well. Is there a way to maybe play him inside? If you're going to just play it so slowly, I think he's more of a threat inside the penalty area than Havertz. Uh, if Arsenal cross the ball a lot, I'd understand playing Havertz instead, but they really don't. So Arteta needs to sort that out a little bit as well. So we'll see. We just had an international break, just had some time now. A lot of players were out for him, but we'll see if they're able to kind of regroup after this break. And then with Chelsea, I did kind of, Reece James wasn't necessarily fit to start. He did come on in the second half. If Reece James is played instead of Gusto, does he score that header instead? Did they make that goal in the first half? I do wonder about that. And also with Enzo Fernandez, I'm curious, can Chelsea do what Arsenal are doing with Partey with Enzo Fernandez? Can you drop him a little bit more and make him a conductor from behind? Because the thing that I'm seeing here is Fofana. I mean, Colwell's pretty good with his feet. Passing the ball. Fofana seems like he's quite comfortable at ball carrying, but you don't always have Casado and Lavia are not necessarily going to drop down and to spread the ball left and right. Enzo is that kind of player. Now Enzo maybe leaves you a little bit vulnerable out of possession, but it just feels like they don't have a way to play him now, and they spent a lot of money on him. They sent out a couple of players that instead, like Conor Gallagher, to kind of fit this guy in. Is that a way to maybe better suit his skill set a little bit? Surround him with legs, but have him drop deep, have him kind of become a conductor. Maybe you only have one of Lavia or Caicedo to be kind of a battering ram ahead to kind of win your duels. You don't necessarily need two. Is that a way to maybe do this as well? Fofana and Colwell are starting to form a decent little partnership, decent little bond. That's a positive. I don't really love the way they're using Mark Cucurella. Though people were saying he was man of the match. I mean, he's good with the ball at his feet, but I feel like he offers you a little bit more, going forward, at least, width wise, not necessarily being a center back. Now he is good with the ball at his feet, and he doesn't necessarily turn it over. So Chelsea like him that way. I do feel like if you're going to play him at center back, he's a liability on any kind of cross defending a back post. But it is what it is. Casado continues to be strong. But again, the balance to find a partner continues to elude them. The reason why Enzo hasn't worked in a pivot when he's higher upfield is he doesn't necessarily run that best. He doesn't necessarily track. If you're going to drop him almost into like a back three where you're playing really high line, and he kind of becomes almost like a maestro in that situation, and you have Caicedo a little bit ahead, I feel like that makes it work a little bit better than necessarily a pivot. Where you're kind of splitting it up a little bit. Caicedo has the engine room to cover whole lots of grounds. He doesn't have to be in that one little spot. He can go everywhere and still recover. I feel like that's the better way to do it. We'll see if Chelsea make that switch or not. We haven't necessarily seen it yet, so there's no reason to really think we will. But to get to the negatives, it does start with their keeper. would the way that they're playing, would this look different if they had someone else in goal for them, someone that was better with their feet, because it was too easy to press him to get him to turn the ball over. And Palmer and Jackson just can't get going in the second half the way that they were, or the way that Palmer was in the second. Just Chelsea can't get Palmer the ball nearly as much, and that's a problem as well. You're trying to do all this possession stuff. If you can't get your best player the ball, what really is the point? So again, I'm not necessarily buying the Enzo Maresca hype, but maybe I am a hater a little bit. And so that said, if you are a Chelsea fan, there's a little bit of everything. If however you sided before this, you can either have evidence to doubt yourself or to double down. Are they really contenders? Is there a ceiling? I do feel like there's a ceiling. The sub changes to me, I do think, kind of help that case. Reece James coming on, not starting, and now we know that he's hurt again. And Kuko coming on for Jackson late, I thought was kind of lame. Why not try them both together? Lavia getting hurt and Enzo coming on. Lavia and Caicedo again are quite good at being dual monsters, but you don't have anyone that's ever going to be a threat to make a run into the box and to be a goal threat. They're still missing that. And Nkuku feels like he can maybe kind of offer that a little bit. How do you fit Nkuku and Jackson together? Because those are your two best probably goal scoring threats. To be honest, how can you get Cole Palmer a little bit more involved? The way you do that is if you have Nkuku on the field too, you can't just double up on Palmer. I feel like Arsenal didn't care when Gusto or whoever had the ball. Just make sure Palmer doesn't get it. So that is kind of where we are with that. And then we'll move on with Brighton and Man City, see how we're doing for time. And it probably is what I would expect. Man City and Brighton. Brighton do go on to win 2-1. Haaland gets the first goal. Man City really were the dominant team in that opening half. I feel like Haaland could have probably had one or two more. A couple good saves by Bregan. Brighton were not really good in that opening half. And then we did see a change. We saw both midfielders kind of changed. And it came, one of them I feel like was just maybe a Veltman, not Veltman. To Iori maybe had a red, or maybe had a yellow card. Maybe wasn't necessarily his best. He gets hooked. He also had a bit of a misplaced pass that led to the first goal. And then Hazelwood gets on the end of kind of a header, and then he basically goes into a challenge and he hurts himself. So Brighton have to change the midfield. And so on comes Carlos Baliba. Carlos Baliba came on for Iori in the first half, where at the start of halftime. I don't understand why Baliba doesn't start for them every single game, because he looks amazing to me every time he plays. But that's something that's just kind of on the back of my mind. And then two, we see Matty O'Reilly make a debut, where they brought him in from Celtic, and he looked quite a good player when I actually saw them play Man City in the U.S. Summer Tour. But not everyone knows how to take seriously those kind of events. Just someone that looked quite good with the ball at his feet, someone that was quite inventive, someone that was good making forward runs and being forward minded. He makes a move to Brighton at the end of the transfer window, and then he gets hurt. Either fractured his leg. He got a pretty bad injury in an early EFL Cup game, and we hadn't seen him. And I thought his season was maybe going to be over. And then lo and behold, he comes back, he gets a debut, and he gets the second goal. And it's a brilliant ball found by, I believe, Carlos Baliba. Carlos Baliba was a complete game changer in that second half. We also saw João Pedro come on, and João Pedro gets the first goal as well. So it's Pedro and Matty O'Reilly. Brighton win 2-1. Brighton created something like 8 chances in the entire game, 8 big chances, 6 in the second half. And what happened was Man City had no ability to press Brighton into mistakes, and they had no ability to, when Carlos Baliba was running at Iva Kovacic or Bernardo Silva or whoever was playing in that midfield, it was leading Gundogan. It was just leading to turnover after turnover, and just there was no fear factor. No fear factor at all. And that is where Man City kind of had some problems. So when we're starting to see the injuries pile up, because you're seeing Mateus Nunes, who has done a job for them, he's forced to play on the wing. And I feel like he's basically a midfielder. So you're kind of forcing him to play there. We're seeing Phil Foden and Gundogan tried. Phil Foden is playing in this 10 role, and he hasn't necessarily had bad games, but at the same time, he's not Kevin De Bruyne. And This should have been a moment where we actually should have seen him shine a little bit. Now he did have a pretty good first half, but it's still taking a little bit while for that to get going. Bernardo Silva doesn't always start, and when he does play, you don't really know where to play him. Sometimes you'll play him, sometimes Pep plays him on the right wing, just to be someone that understands. Hey, just have someone on the touchline. It's not really going to ever beat someone to beat someone 1v1. Like Savio is, and Savio had a pretty good game as well when he started, but he got taken off, and but the other thing to talk about here is the back line. So Kyle Walker back, but he doesn't look healthy. And then you have Simpson, and you have Gvardiol and Lewis. So Gvardiol isn't played at left back; he's center back. And you have Rico Lewis, who to me is one, he's been played at right back, but you're trying him differently, trying to almost in midfield kind of squeeze him a little bit at left back. But he's also like 5'7", soaking wet. I don't really know what he is weight wise, but he is tiny and he's not going to win any kind of tool. And he got bullied in that second half. I think he got bullied for the Al Pedro goal, and you're starting to see some of that too. So the injuries are starting to pile up. Maybe Man City can return fit. I think I saw that most of the people are back. John Stones is back. Rima Diaz maybe is back. Kevin De Bruyne looked to be back before the international break. He was actually he got subbed on. Wasn't really able to get on the ball to do anything. And Kevin De Bruyne had he doesn't really solve your out of possession problems, but you get him the ball, he's going to be able to find Holland. So it's maybe not all doom and gloom yet, but you look at Simpson, and he's a 19-year-old. Uh, it, it, yeah, I don't feel like Man City fans want a 19-year-old, playing a big away game, and it's not really like he has a fault for one of the goals, but what he does is I think it's Matoma. Matoma has either a cross or some kind of a touch where Simpson just kind of he tries to clear it and he just clears it to Matoma, and then they basically keep the ball and that leads to one of the goals. So it's just and I just saw Kovacic is maybe hurt now, and they've been asking Kovacic to play like Rodri, and he's not that player. So, and you've gone all those years with never really finding a replacement for him. The replacement was supposed to be Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips didn't work out. You sold him, and Calvin Phillips hasn't even worked out for Ipswich. I mean, yeah, Ipswich. It didn't work out for West Ham either. So, where are you going to go now? Do you try Bernardo Silva and Gundogan just kind of basically as two to just kind of annoy people in that middle, and if nothing else, at least they're good with the ball at their feet. How are you going to play Phil Foden with Kevin De Bruyne back? There are a lot of Pep has a lot of things to think about as we go forward. And then with Brighton, we see a lot of players that didn't score the goals. We see Henselwood and Ayari. Henselwood's a good player. I still don't really know if he's better at midfield or better as kind of at fullback. But here's kind of the change that I've seen with Brighton. We see Veltman. Veltman can still be got at, but you see Van Hecke and Igor and Estupian. You're not seeing Adam Webster. You're not seeing Lewis Dunk. And now, yes, Holland was able to get in behind. Yes, Holland is still good. Uh, One thing you're seeing with Brighton here is they can at least somewhat play a high line. Holland is Holland, but you're allowed to at least be a little bit more forward minded, at least in that sense. You're not forcing them to play so far deep where the spaces between the midfield line and the back line is where it is. Igor and Van Hecke have actually been a pretty good pairing together, and Estupian coming in, I think, is their best left back, where he's got a great delivery, and Brighton been scoring a lot of goals by getting a lot of him just kind of doing overlap runs with Matoma. You get Matoma, you can either run off him or you can underlap him, and Estupian just has the really good delivery on that left side to always give some fits. And they, again, I think Brighton scored one of their goals from some of that, or at least they created a lot of their chances from some of that. Carlos Baliba on the bench again, Yao Pedro on the bench. It was Jorginho, Rutter, and Welbeck to start, and they've been pretty good pairing as well. But Rutter gets hooked. Yao Pedro comes in. Yao Pedro has been someone that they've been missing for a while this season as well, and just Brighton really are stacked. I saw a lot of people kind of dooming on them to start the season. Now I'm not going to say that Brighton is going to just surprise everyone, get top four, and do this after De Zerbi. But I do feel like it was weird how a lot of people were doubting Brighton to start the season. When you look at the team, and the team is unbelievable. Like it's too deep at almost every position. And that's before of some of their. That's before you see some of these players that we hadn't even seen Rutter play for them. He's looked good for them when he's gotten his minutes. Welbeck's having a really good season to start scoring for them. I'm not even mentioning Evan Ferguson. He hasn't been able to necessarily get going yet either, though he does look fit now. I think he just started for Ireland. So Brighton, and you have Matoma, you have Adingra. If that's not working, we just saw they have Menta to come in. You have I'm not mentioning Enciso anymore. They have Sully Marsh to eventually return. We don't know what the idea is going to be with him. So you have Lamptey that can fit in somewhere. Just Brighton. The only thing I've thought about in the past is their back line is with Dunk and Webster. I don't think is good enough. With Van Hecken and Igor, maybe I have to rethink that, because another thing that we're seeing is Van Hecken is really good with the ball at his feet. He a couple of these moments for Brighton in that second half was Van Hecken just threading beautiful ball after ball. Being foreign minded. So I'm not going to really touch about the first half. I will focus on the second half. So we have an early sub. Iori is struggling. I think he has on a yellow, so that's why he's hooked. Carlos Baleba comes in. Suddenly Brighton are able to contest and win almost every single duel that happens. And with that, they flip the game. And again, I am surprised he's not a regular starter for them, because it's not just the duel winning. He's clever on the ball. He showed that with Wolves. He had a thunder shot as well. It's different between Casado and Lavia, similar kind of players, but when he gets forward, he's actually quite dangerous with it. He's intriguing. He really is. They bought him in to basically be Moses Caicedo's replacement. I believe they got him from Lille. I don't know what they brought him in for. Maybe it was 20 million, 30 million. They're going to flip that for double easily. I have already seen people already heavily linked to him. I've been talking him up for a while now, and after this performance, I'll double down on that. I think he's special. But we're also seeing here, Man City are starting to lay off them, and it starts to hurt them. So we start to see a chance here. Hinselwood header. It comes from a brilliant through ball played by Van Hecke, and that starts to be a bit of a theme that we see in that second half. Just a line splitting passes you hear about. Ruder collects it well. He finds Matoma, plays it out wide to Estupian. Great cross in. Probably should have been a goal. But that is Hinselwood's dead, so Hinselwood has to come off. Matty O'Reilly comes on, and then we also see Yao Pedro and Martin Gruda, Gruda come off the bench for Gruder and Adinger. Gruda's another player that I haven't even mentioned yet. They brought him in at the end of that transfer window. Gruda was apparently someone that was making a lot of noise for being a young, fun player in the German league. And I've only seen him. I saw him actually, come in and play versus Liverpool in that EFL game in the midweek a couple of weeks ago. He looked quite good then too. He's got quite a nifty, left foot on him. But anyways, we start to see chance after chance for Brighton. So here, again, no ball pressure from City. Carlos Baleba is able to show off a little bit. He shows four ball, then plays a great four ball to find Matoma, who is able to beat Kyle Walker for pace. Again, this in the past, this doesn't happen. Regardless of how good Matoma is, how good of an athlete Matoma is, Kyle Walker is as well. You're starting to see the injuries. You're starting to see the age catch up a little bit to them. And with that, you're starting to see Pep's kind of secret sauce as far as how to defend counters go away as well. If you're not going to put ball pressure on the ball and you're still going to play high line, you can get in behind. And Brighton start to do that with ease. And here, again, Matoma plays it to Estupian where he gets a cross on, and it's a free header. Ruder just misses it up. So Brighton are getting closer, and we get another chance here. City, again, we're trying to keep the ball, but Ederson fires something upfield to Phil Foden. He has a heavy touch, and then Baleba just shoulders Kovacic off the ball in the duel. Baleba then plays in Matoma in the box, and it just goes too far out in front of him. And then we have Van Hecke, long ball finds João Pedro, timing a run, onside, gets in behind the City's high line. Ederson 1v1, but Pedro messes up the chance. Was that going to be the moment? Pep then goes for a second. He brings on Kevin De Bruyne, brings on Bernardo Silva for Savio and Gundogan, and Brighton get their first goal. Man City had the warnings, the high defensive line, the zero ball pressure on the ball carrier. Van Hecke again. He has a long switch diagonal, finds Matoma in space. He's able to run away from Kyle Walker. Again, Walker can't recover to stop the cross into the box. This time, City don't get the luck to go their way. After some congestion, after Welbeck basically whiffs on a shot, the rebound finds Pedro, who is first to react, fires something in past Ederson. Rico Lewis goes to the ground for some reason. He goes to the ground early. Maybe he's trying to block a shot. He thinks he's clever, but all he does is kind of puts Welbeck off, and City aren't able to clear the ball, and then João Pedro is able to the ball finds him, and he's able to put it away. Fully deserved, though, the way the second half was played, and they do get their rewards with a second. Again, Brighton have zero ball pressure on them. Two center backs are by themselves, and so is Carlos Baleba, who's able to run. He receives the ball, he turns, no one's near him, and then the goal comes from the ball he fires in. Just plays a great little through ball to find Welbeck. Welbeck posts us up. Welbeck collects it. It's not the easiest ball to collect. It's possibly a bad pass by Carlos Baleba, but Welbeck has the touch to collect it, so really well there. And then he lays it off to find Pedro, who then carries it a little bit, gets near the City penalty area, where he releases the ball into the box to pick out Matty O'Reilly's run ahead, where O'Reilly has a really clever first touch to first control the ball, and then he's able to flick it past Ederson. Pep has seemed to move now Phil Foden out to the left, Mateus Nunes centrally in the second half, and Nunes doesn't stick with Carlos Baleba here. So lots of players just kind of playing in different positions, not really used to it. City just feel like they're disorganized at the minute. But as a Liverpool fan, I followed Man City for a little bit now. They do this every freaking November, where it feels like this is going to finally be the time when it catches up to Pep. Come December, come January, come February, you look back, and normally they've gone on a 20-game win streak, annoyingly enough. That said, they don't have Rodri now. I don't know if it's going to be that easy for them to fix. If so, it'll be because Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne just go off. Or maybe Phil Foden, returns to the player he was last season, and maybe they just outscore teams. They don't seem to me a midfield that can fix this by what they have in the locker. They don't have the ability to. There's not the fear factor anymore for just having Man City on their shirt, where the teams are going to give them the ball away. Man City are going to have to work to get them to turn it over. I haven't seen them being able to do that yet. Now, maybe when Stones returns, that can be another thing. Maybe they can be Ruben Diaz return. Maybe they can be better defensively as well. But it's not the same, and but they still have that attack going forward. So maybe they will be able to outscore teams, and they can kind of do it that way. But it's not going to be. I don't even think Pep's going to be able to kill teams with 500,000 passes as a way to kind of play without the ball, because I feel like teams are going to be able to just kind of shoulder off Bernardo Silva or Foden, or even if he comes with fouling. I just. The makeup of the squad is a bit weird, and without Rodri, you do see a giant hole, because Rodri Welch is brilliant technically. He was a big man, and he was responsible for winning a lot of those duels and winning balls in the air as well. It's different. So will they be able to turn this around or not? They have lost 4 in a row now, but it feels like again every November this happens. So. Will they be able to turn it around or not? Even again with the games that they were winning before that, with Fulham, the Adama chances, not just the Fulham were able to control the ball in the second half, the 3 or 4 Adama chances where he was able to run in behind, whether it was Rico Lewis or Kyle Walker. So we started to see the warning signs then. Wolves got in behind, scored one, probably should have scored another, where Ederson had to make a couple big saves. Even Southampton were able to control the game with their tempo. That's not now. Pep's praised Russell Martin and Southampton, but other teams have been able to press Southampton into mistakes by doing that. Man City weren't able to do that. So, and they were getting cut open here. So, whether or not it was slow passes, whether or not it was through the middle with Baleba showing for the ball, whether or not it was through some clever switches by Van Hecke with some of that passing range. So a lot of warning signs for City here, but also it's not just about them. It's also worth talking up Brighton. They've been a dragging slayer a little bit in this 3-horse race. They've drawn Arsenal. They gave Liverpool help, and now this, and it was a completely different Brighton team from the first half. And really the big change was the midfield that changed. And again, the way that Haaland was getting behind and getting chances for fun that first half, the second half that wasn't really the case. But Man City weren't really able to find him. So. The Baleba sub was big. There was also a moment when there was maybe going to be a loose ball. Baleba was able to shoulder Haaland off the ball as well. So you started to see that recovery. This is probably the best that we've seen Matoma play. I feel like Matoma and Estupiñán is kind of the best kind of combination there. So there was just no way for City to respond. Like I said, 10 shots, only 4 on target, but they had 3 and 0 in the second half. So 6 big chances in the second half, 8 in total. Man City did have 15 shots, 6 on target, but they had 9 and 5 in the first half. So that just shows how much things flipped. Possession in Man City's favor, probably what you expect. Passes in Man City's favor, what you would expect. Um, and then the kind of closing thing to say with Brighton is it, it is a different than what we've seen from De Zerbi. Um, you don't not seeing the 3 pass combinations, but you're not seeing McAllister and Casado there either. So um, you're not seeing Ferguson, come in and play. It is different. But hey, they've got such a well run operation there, and they've gone out and bought a manager in, and hey, uh, some people don't like giving managers credits. It's the players that do stuff, but the players that he brought in, Yao Pedro, brought in Gruda, brought in Carlos Baliba and Matty O'Reilly, whether or not it was by necessity or not. Those changes are why this game flipped. So really good changes in the second half, and again with in a weird way, Lewis Dunk and Adam Webster getting injured has helped them because Van Hecke and Igor are different. The center backs aren't holding this team back like they were. They weren't. They like they were in the beginning. Now, do they have depth if something happens to them or not? Van Hecke actually was getting Netherlands caps, which he really is a good player. I just feel like you need to pair him with someone. That pairing with Igor seems to be quite good so far. And then with Man City, again with Kevin De Bruyne back, Holland is going to get some looks. It's not a coincidence that Holland was firing. He was scoring like almost a hat trick every other game. In that opening, 7 games with Kevin De Bruyne in the side again. Kevin De Bruyne hasn't always been at his best, but he's been able to find Holland. That's going to return. So again, maybe Man City can find a way to fix this again. The other thing too is, I mentioned how Simpson was played. No Stones and Ruben Diaz, yes, but Ake was benched here. No Akanji either. So it maybe perhaps had a falling out with them. It was weird to see Gvardiol was played. Uh, he was used to play at center back, not at the fullback spot. It was Rico Lewis. I don't think that worked out with Rico Lewis. And it was interesting to see Ake or Kanje not just try to center back with the kid. But again, I saw that Stones and I think Ruben Diaz are back training, so that's maybe not going to be a problem. Uh, and the last thing to talk about, I guess, with them is a couple negatives. Kovacic isn't a traditional 6, and it looks like he's injured now. And Gundogan has since returned, and without Rodri, it's not the same player. And it feels like they're not necessarily able to get the best out of him so far, and just that hasn't worked out. You're seeing a lot of technical quality in the side. You're not seeing the physicality. Before City have kind of had a pretty good marriage between the two. Now you're missing that. So that is where we are with Man City, and then that's probably all I have to say about most of these games. Liverpool and Aston Villa. Liverpool do go and win 2-1 with Darwin Núñez and Mo Salah. Could have been more. It looked like Darwin Núñez had a chance to make it 2-0 and have people actually praising him. Oh, is his demons gone? And the answer is no. He's still Darwin Núñez, and what that means is he's going to give you the good, and he's going to give you the bad, and he's going to produce chaos. You don't know which one you're going to get. Essentially, he offers a lot of runs, a lot of work rate. They get the goals because of his runs. To be fair, and then Mo Salah gets the second. Salah's had an unbelievable start to the season. I think he's on 10 goals and 10 assists already, almost a goal or assist every single game. It seems, and the only question is how repeatable is this? How because he's also playing in Champions League as well, and he's also producing in Champions League. How sustainable is this? Because they're asking the NBC people at the end, what is their weakness to this team? And both the talking heads said no. I think it's there. I think they don't have any kind of like for like on that right side. If Salah can't go, if Salah picks up something, and the problem for me is they don't have a way to baby him. They don't, you who do you? Harvey Elliott is hurt. It's still not really. It's never going to be like for like. But do you try Luis Diaz on the right side with Gakpo left? Maybe you try that. Maybe you try Jota when he returns back fitness. But that to me is the biggest question mark in this entire side is Salah's health. The other thing is just kind of the health in general in the squad. We see Trent Alexander-Arnold have to go down. 20 minutes into this game. Thankfully, the international break maybe came at a good time, but hopefully he gets back fit soon because really the only team they lost to was when Conor Bradley was playing, not Alexander-Arnold. Now, it was not really Bradley's fault that he was beaten by an unbelievable, wonder goal by Hudson-Odoi, but I don't like, it was relatively predictable that Hudson-Odoi would have wanted to get the ball to his right foot. Don't maybe show him that side, but oh well. Uh, Bradley was played here and actually did a pretty good job, I thought, on Aston Villa when he came on. But I don't want Connor Bradley versus Vinicius Jr. That's coming up. If Man City are able to get healthy, I don't want Connor Bradley versus Jeremy Doku. To be honest, one of the weird things about the season is Trent Alexander-Arnold has been a fantastic defensive right back, not just going forwards. So hopefully that injury isn't necessarily too severe. We'll have to see. I think I saw that they got lucky and they're gonna just kind of baby him, but after Southampton on the weekend, and I don't want to take Southampton necessarily lightly, uh, but it's hard to necessarily not overlook them because right after Southampton is Real Madrid in the midweek, and then it's Man City right after that. So lots of ways, lots of storylines to form. That's going to maybe flip narratives or maybe kind of double down on some established narratives in the coming couple of weeks here, or couple of weeks here. So that's kind of where we are. The actual game to talk about, not a ton really happened. I thought Aston Villa were actually doing a pretty good job to counter. But I thought Ollie Watkins was isolated. There was a couple of moments when it felt like maybe Morgan Rogers was in pretty good positions to actually be threatening, but he wasn't offering any kind of end product. And I feel like the way that Unai Emery is playing, he's kind of doing that 4-2-3-1 kind of stuff too, and he's playing Morgan Rogers either as a double striker or as a 10. I don't understand why. If Morgan Rogers is going to play, and yeah, he offers you lots of great ball carrying, lots of advancement, good on the counter. Is what he offering you more than enough to justify benching John Duran every single game? I don't know if that's the case. I feel like you can play John Duran and Ollie Watkins together. And I am surprised we haven't actually seen that tried a little bit more than we have. We've seen it in spurts. We've seen it in second halves when that seems to be like Unai Emery's kind of tweak in the second halves. It's not always like for like. Sometimes he actually is trying to play them both together. But I do feel like that's where Villa is kind of missing a little bit something. And also, Jacob Ramsey was playing pretty well in this game, and then he had to come off for injury. And it just feel like they're kind of missing a little bit when you have to replace him. Matakash not able to play as well, so you're forcing Kanza to play at right back. It's not really his best position. And you're forcing him to play Diego Carlos next to Paul Torres, and Diego Carlos has the mistake that leads to the second Salah goal. So it's not the most injuries are kind of hurting Aston Villa, and after starting off really really hot, they're starting to kind of hit a couple of road bumps here with Tottenham. With I think they lost in the Champions League week as well, and then they have a blip here, so they've lost a couple in a row now. And then the other thing to talk about with John Duran is this was one of the last games that Klopp was in charge of Liverpool last season, last March or last April, and one of the, basically Aston Villa tied that game. I think this was the game that actually gave them Champions League qualification officially. And John Duran came on in the second half and got 2 quick goals. Actually had Liverpool's backline ragged. And again, it was just very weird how we saw him come on late, but by then it was just kind of too little too late. Liverpool get both goals by set pieces. And really the Liverpool were not really great in the open play. Now there was a lot of good possession, but they weren't really able to create a whole lot. And the best chances came when, weirdly enough, Aston Villa had corner kicks. And both chances for both teams came when Aston Villa had corner kicks because Liverpool score with Darwin Núñez, and they have another moment breakaway where it felt like Darwin Núñez had a chance to beat to score 1v1, wasn't able to put it away, and then Aston Villa's chances came after they had a couple corner kicks where they forced Kelly and Kelleher to have to make some pretty big saves, and from close distance. So it could have been it was 1-0 at halftime. It could have been a little bit more. It could have been tied. And then Aston Villa have the big chance with Morgan Rogers. Probably needs to put it away because it's a long ball that if Konate just falls down kind of weird. That's another thing too. The last time I did a show, I was worried about Konate actually being hurt, and apparently they got a little bit lucky here. He is playing with a little bit of a wrist bandage, but it's not a cast or anything. But he did fall down and he got hurt, and it was a bit awkward. He was laying down. Rogers is completely free on goal. And if he gets it on goal, I don't know if Kelleher can save that, but he whiffs it. And then Liverpool do get a couple chances. There's a Darwin Núñez header. Núñez did play well, Pretty decent Robinson cross as well. Free header, but he gets pretty good power on it, but missed. And then there was a moment when right before Liverpool have a 4v1 basically, and Salah messes up a pass to Luis Diaz. And then after a throw in, Liverpool were able to break up field. There's Diego Carlos has a chance to kind of to clear this away, and he basically heads it right into Salah. And Salah is able to basically run past him, and he again it's another 4v1 where he basically plays the runs of Luis Diaz and Gakpo, and is able to kind of fool Emi Martinez into kind of thinking the pass is going to be on. Then Salah is able to flick it over his head to score. And again, Salah's been absolutely magnificent to start the season. And the only thing is it too much too soon? You do want to you worry if enough will be in the tank. There is no African Cup of Nations this February, so that's at least something to, or January and February, so that's at least something for Liverpool fans to kind of hold on to a little bit. That normally is what drains Salah in these title runs. So we'll see if and they still have a Chiesa that they brought in. Is that going to be a bit of a dud signing, or is Chiesa after he gets fit, is he going to be able to actually be that uh, just that player to give Salah some minutes here and there? We'll have to see if that is the case or not. If they have Chiesa and he can actually play a little bit, and he's not just going to be a lemon signing, as they say when you buy a car and it's a lemon. Uh, Maybe I will actually double down a little bit. Yeah, still like Jota can finally come in, and I feel like Liverpool's best setup. You don't really know where the best 11 is because Dominic Szoboszlai is kind of playing in this number 10 kind of role, and Liverpool are not able to create for him, and I feel like it's kind of uncomfortable for him too. He's an attacking player. He's not really a number 10 kind of creative kind of setup kind of man, and he has a pretty good shot on him, but it does feel like they're kind of missing. They're kind of lacking a little bit here. So it's not Liverpool have a 9-point lead over Arsenal. They're first in the table in Champions League, first in the table in the league, and they haven't really hit their full stride yet, in my opinion, with Arne Slot. If Arnie Elliott returns, does he immediately get into that number 10 kind of spot just immediately, or do you try Jota even there? Where we saw that versus West Ham, where Jota and Darwin Núñez kind of played together, played off each other. That's the best Liverpool have looked. Go to Gakpo played in that game and got a couple goals. Liverpool just destroyed West Ham, trying to sit off them, trying to play in a block. They scored like 5 goals in that game. That to me is probably the best 11 that they can put together. Maybe Harvey Elliott can come in and be a little bit of that number 10, that kind of that player that has that forward pass, has that through ball, has actually a pretty good shot on him as well. Szoboszlai is not necessarily, it's not all on his fault, but it just feels like they're struggling a little bit in games when they don't have that space to get in behind. Now, Villa will play that high line. Villa were actually, I don't think they meant to do it because it only happened on corner kicks and on a throw in kind of late in the game. For the most part, Villa were not really pressing them, and the spaces to get in behind were not really there. It was hard to create, and Liverpool were struggling a little bit there. So and you also, without Alexander Arnold, you're missing that distribution. You're missing that ball over the top. You're missing those long switches. Connor Bradley's a good player. He doesn't have that in his locker yet, but maybe he will later on down. So. The lasting take I have here is it's very similar to Klopp's last season. The season probably go as far as Salah, Konate, Van Dijk can take care of them. If they can stay healthy and avoid injury, and they already did avoid a disaster with Konate. But even in that Brighton game, one thing I didn't talk about there is Gomez played and had an unbelievable second half for them when they needed him as well. So again, the big stretch of Man City, Madrid, Newcastle coming up. Newcastle again after that isn't going to be an easy game. Newcastle away, and then Southampton away could be tricky too. So again, we'll see if Harvey Elliott, Chiesa, and Jota can recover to fitness and really help out because that's a lot of really tough games. Back to back to back. It's going to take it's going to take some people to do a job here where it can't just be Salah carrying every single game because if that is the case, then they are going to drop points. Salah can't just be the only man to do it. Alexander Arnold's remains a question mark. The other fullback remains a question mark as well because Tsimikas is starting for Champions League games, and all of a sudden Andy Robinson gets a start, and he actually had a pretty good game himself. So who do you play at that left back spot? The XG was about 2, 14 shots, 5 on target. Aston Villa with only 12 shots and 2 on target. Big Rogers chance. Ollie Watkins just not able to really create a whole lot for himself. Liverpool with a lot of possession, a lot of passes. 546, 88% accuracy. Villa with not a lot, 288s. It's another case where you got Tielemans. Tielemans can always find those through balls, but I just feel like they're not getting the best out of Ross Barkley by just having him to be on the bench. And I don't really know how you fit on Andre Onana in games wherein you can't necessarily win without the ball, and Onana isn't necessarily good enough. He's good with the ball at his feet, but he's not necessarily a little Declan Rice in my opinion. Doesn't really have that ability to have that passing vision to play someone in behind with the directness. He can play the easy pass. He can ball carry it, but he doesn't necessarily have that. I feel like you're missing what Boris Barkley could offer. I don't know if you could play Barkley and Tielemans together. That could feel kind of weak, but you could play Kamara. Kamara's back. You could try to play Kamara with Ross Barkley instead. Maybe play Tielemans in that 10 role. Maybe that could be a way to do it, or Emi Buendia when he returns. So it just feels like that is where we are there. And I just talked about actually with Szoboszlai having his kind of starting spot. One player I didn't mention is Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones has had a pretty good couple of weeks now. He actually just had a pretty good week for England as well. And it feels like he's taken the starting spot. And I don't necessarily always love him because again, it just feels like sometimes he's late to delay the pass. But one thing I can say about him is he finally has unlocked it a little bit. He's had a ball that played in Salah for Brighton. Salah had an unbelievable goal that helped Liverpool beat Brighton. I didn't even talk about that. And then Curtis Jones was able to actually get that opening goal versus not Leipzig versus Xabi Alonso's Bayern Leverkusen, and really that was a game where Liverpool were kind of struggling to create too. And you finally had just someone to get the ball to thread in a pass when it was needed. It's not always coming off. I do feel like Curtis Jones, he has a lot of great great work rate off the ball. He's fantastic when he's actually in possession. No, you're not going to really be able to press him into mistakes. But when things are really bogged in, does he have that creative spark to him? That's where I want someone a little bit better with the ball at his feet, someone a little bit more shifty, that can make a man miss, that can unlock things. That's where I feel like a Chiesa, a Jota, or even a Harvey Elliott maybe fits that 10 role a little bit better versus blocked in opposition sides. Because again, just at least in this game, other than Salah, you lack someone that can beat a man in tight spaces that can create. Luis Diaz can do that, but he doesn't always offer the goals that come with it. Luis Diaz actually played at striker spot versus Leverkusen, and he actually had a hat trick playing a different way. We're wondering if that was actually going to be the idea instead. Instead, he played at left wing, and it didn't necessarily come off. I feel like Gakpo is actually your best left winger. To be honest, and Darwin Núñez, you love him and you hate him. Really, but at the same time, they don't get a lot of these goals without his runs, and also his pressing and link-up play has dramatically improved as well. So, uh, there's positives here. There's some warning signs as well. Alexis to me is probably your best 10, but you don't really have a player to play next to him, whether or not it's Endo next to Gravenberch. I don't really know if Slot wants to really go there. So there's a couple of chess pieces for Slot to kind of figure out, or square pieces and round holes, or whatever that would be. The pivot, Jones and Curtis Jones and Grand Gravenberch maybe is the better pivot. You actually play Curtis Jones a little bit further behind, and maybe you can try to play Alexis or someone else a little higher up. Maybe that could be a way to do it as well. Gravenberch has also played a lot of games so far for Slot, and we've been playing games for Netherlands. So eventually you are going to have to trust Endo for a couple of these games because you haven't brought in anyone else to play in that kind of number 6 kind of role. And then we'll see what when people returning, what they will finally help to offer. And one final thing to talk about here is Kelleher. One player that haven't people have kind of been overlooking is Liverpool have been missing Alisson for a lot of these games, and they haven't lost any kind of step. And I don't want to necessarily say they're better off without Alisson because I'm not going to go there, but I am going to say that the way that they've versus Arsenal, versus Chelsea, the way that they've been asking Kelleher to almost bait people pressing them and to make better mistakes on the better decisions on the ball.
I don't necessarily know if Allison would be able to do this. I feel like Allison likes to go long a little bit more. Kelleher's got a I think he's a better head on him where he can handle being pressed a little bit more. He also he made an unbelievable save as well. So he's a good shot stopper as well. Allison is the best shot stopper I think in world football, other than maybe Courtois. Those are the only two I can really think about. Or that's the only one that could even I think even have a claim to that title. Amy Martinez I guess would be up there as well, but Kelleher is maybe a little bit better with the ball at his feet, and Slot wants possession. He wants control. So when Allison returns, is that going to be a problem or not? Can Allison learn to get that into his game or not? Because I feel like Allison has a mistake once a game where he freaks under pressure and he tries to play a goofy ball where he's not really looking, and it goes in the middle of the field and it's a turnover, and it usually leads to a chance that he usually has to save. So that is kind of one thing that I'll be looking out for when he returns, and I think I saw him back in fitness, and then cannot, and also Callum Kelleher. It's very awkward for him because uh, Liverpool just signed the Georgia keeper, Mavidashvili, for Valencia, who's also like 24, 25 as well, and you paid a lot of money for him. You're expecting him to, and nothing else, be coming in to be the second. So it's awkward for Keller. It feels like his time is maybe coming to an end, and Liverpool will probably sell him for a pretty good fee. And whatever team gets him, I think they're getting a Champions League level goalkeeper. And it's weird to say that for a backup. Not a, I look at Chelsea. Kelleher on Chelsea is better than Sanchez, in my opinion. Maybe that's just being a homer or not. I don't really feel like he's bad at saves, and he's quite good with the ball at his feet. And he's already, he's Ireland's number one. I think he was actually he saved a PK in his one of his last games in the international window as well. So he had a good international break. Uh, so that is something to say. And then at the end of the day, again, this team is they sometimes you can get players to get in behind them, and sometimes you need fires to be put out. And Kanate and Virgil van Dijk are two unbelievable center backs that can put out fires. They can play in a high line, they can be aggressive upfield, but they can also handle the big distances behind them. And you need to put out some fires like this way when you play this way. So Leba and Gabriel have to do it for Arsenal. Liverpool can do it with Kanate and Virgil van Dijk, where a lot of people doesn't feels like they can do this with two either. Usually, see teams playing with three center backs just to have a third to do that too. The other team that tries this is Tottenham with Van de Ven and Romero, but you can't do that when Van de Ven's not able to play. So their work rate in this team out of possession is really good. So even when teams can get runs in behind, when maybe Rogers gets in behind or Ramsey or Leon Bailey, the recovery runs is pretty good. You've got those center backs that at least make it so you're not always going to be able to just go for goal yourself. You got to normally hold up, and the the recovery runs to get back in position. Even Salah is doing that is quite good as well. And then Leon Bailey, haven't even mentioned his name yet. Robinson put him in a locker. So Robinson hasn't always had the best game. He actually got hooked because he didn't play his best versus Brighton versus Kaladoglu. Tsimikas actually had a really good game in the Champions League, but Robinson was benched, and then he got a chance to return and had a pretty good game there as well. I still feel like Robinson is a little one-dimensional. He can get some pretty good crosses in. That's where Nunez works out. But I feel like Tsimikas is a little bit better with the ball at his feet, regardless of whether or not he's better defending or not. So that is where we are with there, and we've seen some guys step up already. I mentioned Keller. Jawios was the third keeper that had to step up versus Palace. Curtis Jones, big versus Chelsea with the second goal. Big versus Brighton to feed in Salah and Leverkusen. Tsimikas, again, played well when Robinson was benched. Joe Gomez was fantastic versus Brighton before that. So it has been a fairy tale start to start the season. Now, that said, now things really do get going, and I do feel like away to Southampton after the international break. The other game they lost was Nottingham Forest after the international break. So, is it a trap game or not? Real Madrid is in the back of the minds of everyone's minds. So, does Southampton are basically going to be playing for their manager's head, their job. I shouldn't say that, manager's job. So it's probably is a trap game coming up, and Southampton have given people fits. Have they gave Arsenal fits? Regardless of whether Arsenal had 30 shots, they gave Arsenal a difficult game. They gave Man City a difficult game. So uh, we'll see how this weekend sets up. And then with Aston Villa, I do feel like Unai Emery needs to tinker some things without Matty Cash, without Jacob Ramsey. McGinn comes on. It didn't feel like he changed much. Diego Carlos having a mistake. You're missing your best defender with Ezra Konsa played out of position. I do feel like you're missing out of your 10. You're missing what a Ross Barkley or Amy Buendia can maybe offer you a little bit more than what we've seen with Morgan Rogers. Maybe you play with Morgan Rogers on the wing side. Have him making runs out wide because feel like he can do that too. You don't always have to play him through the middle. You find a way to play John Duran and Ollie Watkins as two-striker team. Maybe you do that instead. And I think Jacob Ramsey did have a muscle injury, and once he came off, that did kind of change things. So Unai Emery has lost 4 in a row as well. And things aren't always after that really good start, but it could just be a blip. We'll have to see. And then let's see how we're doing for time. Probably kind of end off a little bit here where I'm not going to spend much time with Man United and Leicester. I will speak a little bit with Tottenham as my final game, and then just kind of run off what happened with elsewhere. So Man United and Leicester, they do win 3-1. Like I said, life's been pretty good with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Bruno with responsible for 2 of those opening goals. Really good hit for the first one, and then makes a pretty good run into the box where there's a cross sent in to him, and he's able to basically knees it on someone. It's basically an own goal. And then Garnacho with an unbelievable goal for the third. Really nice hit. Man United weren't necessarily unbelievable on the eye. They do get 3 goals, but I think they only had like 10 or 11 shots total. Not a lot on target. Leicester did not offer any kind of threat going forward. No Jamie Vardy, no party, as they say. Jordan Ayew was played at striker. They did have some success with the youngster in Fadawadwu. But the unfortunate thing for him is apparently he just did his ACL, I believe, and Leicester are going to be in trouble, in my opinion. I just don't feel like they have enough. They have enough going forward now. They've been a team that I think is actually maybe close to Man United, even in points wise, because they've won three games or so. But I just feel like you look at this. This looks like a relegated kind of roster. In my opinion, they have some pieces there, but I don't know if they have enough goals. They still have Patson Daka to maybe return, so maybe we'll see him, add some goals too. You have Bernete that shows he can score a goal here and there, but otherwise, I just feel like it's not really enough. And we didn't really see them really force any kind of really create any kind of danger, to be honest. So a couple of times when Ndidi was played in behind, and the only problem is you don't want Ndidi to be the one that has to score for you, because it's a pretty good save by Onana, but that was really the only kind of moment that they were able to really force any danger. And then on the flip side, Man United were able to create a whole lot of turnovers. We're able to be pretty compact. Again, Leicester weren't really able to create anything, and then that Casemiro and Ugarte pairing worked quite well because I feel like it's actually allowed Casemiro to maybe even go further upfield. Ugarte again isn't going to be the most expressive with his passing, though he was able to play some people forward. But what he is he's a battering ram, and that is what Man United have needed for a very long time. Even with Kobe Mano, it's just like it's not the same. So I don't even know where Kobe Mano fits when he comes. Maybe he plays instead of Casemiro. That actually does make sense. But it feels like you're playing Ugarte, and I think they said something that he competed in something like 15 or 19 duels total, which is a ton. You see Diallo and Bruno and Rashford get the start ahead with Rasmus, and Diallo had a pretty good game as well. Apparently, Diallo was one of the more important stars in the Champions League game, and then Diallo has come in, and it feels like Ruud van Nistelrooy likes playing Diallo at right, not Rashford and not Garnacho. And Diallo is a player that we didn't always see him with Ten Hag. So we're seeing Diallo playing, we're seeing Ugarte playing, and we're also seeing we're seeing Dallo played at right back, not at left back. We're seeing Mazraoui try it on the other side. And in this game, I thought you saw Mazraoui making some runs and giving Rashford a bit of an overlap. Rashford was allowed to play a little bit more narrow. I thought Diallo was playing a little bit more narrow as well. And again, it's not the prettiest game, but a team wasn't able to just run through Man United like we've already seen. Now, Leicester are probably one of the more weaker sides, in the league, so there's not a ton to look at here. You look at a lot of these players, though, they're not necessarily all going to fit in a Ruben and Morim's kind of 3-4-3 kind of shape, if that is what they try to play. So, not a ton to really take out here. It's just a lasting kind of hurrah for Ruud van Nistelrooy, who I believe I believe they've asked him to kind of stay as kind of an advisory role, which we'll see if that works out or not. Sometimes people come in, they like to have their own people kind of next to him. If not, Ruud van Nistelrooy has done nothing wrong here to at least maybe get a step up with some other team, maybe in a lower division. We'll have to see, or maybe he just likes being being ahead at the club either. But they came in and he didn't do a ton differently, but he did change things where they weren't nearly as open. It felt like Bruno wasn't always pressing as high as Rasmus next to him. It felt like the midfield was a little bit more compact. I felt like Rashford and Diallo were more compact. They weren't being touchline, asked to be on the touchline. So the space wasn't nearly as much there. Now again, someone like Leicester isn't really going to hurt you out wide. Now outside of Fadawawu. It kind of worked out a little bit there. We also saw a back three with Justin, Faze, and Vestergaard. We haven't always seen that. It wasn't really good. And a midfield three of Ndidi, Winks, and Samari. That can usually be a midfield that can at least cause some duels, cause some trouble. And they actually got pretty outdueled themselves. So that's kind of where we are with Man United. A lot more to talk about going forward. 13 shots, 3 on target. Leicester was 6 shots, 5 on target. So, when Leicester were able to get a shot, at least it was on target. XG was low for both. Man United, 418 passes, 85%. It's not, whether or not this Ten Hag was the problem or not. Ten Hag wasn't playing a couple of these players. So you can say maybe it was. But the main thing when you look at this is, are Man United going to be able to play with a high line when Yene Yora returns? And I feel like I did see that he is close to returning. And if that is the case, you have Yora, De Ligt, and you probably have Martinez as like a third center back instead of just being in a two with De Ligt. You've got 3 players that are probably good at the ball of feet. Yora can probably be a little bit of interest going forward. You've got either Meno and Ugarte. Probably Casemiro would be out of the equation. You got Ugarte and maybe someone, and then you have maybe double tens. Do you find a way to actually play Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes together? That's been a big problem that they've been struggling too, because maybe you're not going to be asking your wide players to play your attacking players to play out wide. You're asking them to play a little bit more inside. Does that maybe suit Mason Mount to return or not? Maybe an Ericsson. Because here and there, Ericsson was kind of been playing with Casemiro, and that was another reason why it was pretty easy to kind of get a run. West Ham was actually able to get a run at Man United's midfield with Ericsson and Casemiro. Ugarte back in, all of a sudden that's changed. All of a sudden you have some more energy. You have a workhorse in there that you just haven't. Ugarte is kind of what Casemiro was a little bit in his Real Madrid days. Not like for like. But it's similar a little bit in that kind of mold, at least. I'll put it that way. So there's a lot more to come with Man United than necessarily to talk about here with Ruben Amorim coming in, and they just beat Man City, like I said. So one thing I'm wondering about, so you have the wing backs. Dallow's probably going to be a wing back. Who plays on the other side? Is Mazraoui, if whoever plays on the wing back is going to have to be actually not just offer width, but actually offer some crosses coming in. Can Mazraoui play on that left side, or are you going to see something else? Do you try, Anthony doesn't have any kind of left foot to save his life, or any kind of right foot to save his life, but he does have a left foot. Do you try Anthony as a defensive-minded wingback or attack-minded wingback? I don't know. Do you convert him maybe? Do you convert Garnacho into a wingback role? I don't really know how feasible that is, but we're going to see if Amorim continues with that 3-back or 3-3 formation, or just continues with what he has with the back four with with Bruno in his 10 role, and we just kind of, go from there. Sometimes managers aren't always married to a formation, so there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of new stuff to talk about with Man United. So I'll do that later on. And then with Brentford and Bournemouth, they Brentford go on to win 3-2. They respond after a pretty brutal result versus Fulham. Brentford are a team where if they're playing, they're probably worth watching because there's a lot of goals whenever they play. We get a lot of goals here, 3-2. Evan Nilsson, after a pretty bad back pass, I believe, by Vandenberg, and then Weisse after a cross or corner kick, and then Kluivert makes it 2-1, and then Damsgaard 2-2. This is scored like 30 seconds after the Bournemouth goal. Brentford are really good at scoring goals after kickoffs, and they basically do it here again. Really nice little run into the box. I think it's found by Janelt. Great run by Damsgaard, and it's a great little finish by him. And Damsgaard's had a pretty good run of games for Brentford the last couple of weeks. And then Weisse makes it 2-3 after a really nice through ball was played to him that he's able to make that run and able to finish. And so Brentford are riding pretty high, and it's one of those where it feels like you don't have Ivan Toney, and they've missed a couple of games out without Weisse, but the Weisse and Bremo connection it does lead to goals if nothing else. And one thing I want to say about here is this is a team where it's a goal fest. But why is that? Brentford's possessions aren't really about control based. It feels like Frank wants them to be attack minded and go forwards. Maybe you lose the ball, but if nothing else, you always have numbers in the box when a cross comes. They are very direct. They do like challenging 50-50 balls. It's not always in control, but by doing that, it opens up the other team to kind of play that way too. Now, Bournemouth are also kind of that way. They also don't really like control. They like a chaotic game, and we got that. We got pretty good, end-to-end game where neither side nearly had control with it. And so what that means is now there's not a lot of time when the ball is just kind of not really moving. The ball is always moving. It's just kind of flipping sides a little bit here and there. The other thing too is Nathan Collins continues to be a really good player for them. In the past it's been someone like Ethan Pinnock kind of carrying that back line, or Ben Mee. Nathan Collins was bought for them last season with Wolves, and he's been probably one of their better players, at least at the back end. So and you're starting to finally see some creative play now with players like Keane Lewis Potter or Damsgaard. You're starting to see them find a way to reward those runs that Weisse and Embremo are running or making. And because it's one thing to have an attack line that makes runs. It's another thing you have to be able to find them. You have to be able to award them. Otherwise, they're not going to keep running. So it's nice. Frank has adopted his game plan a little bit to award to fit in, find a way to play someone with a free will, someone that's clever with the someone's more kind of attack minded, someone that's more kind of forward thinking. In that possession, and he's found a way to carve out either a Damsgaard or Lewis Potter, and he's been rewarded with it. 12 shots, 6 on target. Bournemouth did have a couple missed chances. There was one big with Christie, and Hoyson hit the bar, could hit the crossbar as well. Possession 52%, 48%. Passing about 300 to 300 with Bournemouth as well. So. Again, there's no Ivan Toney, and they're still struggling with they're not struggling for goals. Mbremo's up there with Salah when it comes to goals on the right side. Jensen has returned, and that's helped them as well. Jensen, Norgard, and Janelt back in midfield. The way that they what they did here was it was almost like Damsgaard was like tried almost like in the half space. He was tried in the kind of attack line. They played Kane Lewis Potter as like a wingback or like a fullback it was almost like a back three that allowed Lewis Potter to almost make runs in deep. Lewis Potter was ahead, and then you had Damsgaard in kind of the almost like a false nine kind of role with Weisse and Bremo. It was a very weird kind of shape that they used, but it was fun. And you have Jensen back. They've been missing him. Jensen and Norgard when they both play together. Normally Brentford actually do have a pretty good record when those two play together. So that is where we are for that game with Bournemouth. It's one of those where maybe the lack of control did get them a bit. Tyler Adams was out physical in a couple of these duels. Tyler Adams, at least able to play an EPL game was good to see, but not really the best game for him. A positive for Evan Nilsson to score. Semenyo has had a pretty good start to his season as well, and Kleibert, in and out of the side, but he usually does perform well when he does play as well. Uh, it does feel like the crazy thing for Bournemouth is, they may be kind of disappointing not to get something with Brentford here because they're on the back of beating Man City, tying Aston Villa, and beating Arsenal, all in a row, 7 points in with that kind of gauntlet, and then they did kind of drop to Brentford, so maybe a setback was expected. I do feel like if there is a weakness on the side, it's Adam Smith at right back, and Adam Smith replacement at right back is. Is a Mexican player that hasn't been working for them either. So they maybe they need to go in a little bit in the drawing board to figure out maybe a right back situation. But other than that, there's a lot of fun here. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of danger for them to go down as long as they don't suffer any kind of injuries. They're quite weirdly deep in a lot of positions. Just maybe not necessarily the most quality in midfield. They are missing Adam Scott, so with that said, there is going to be an opportunity now for Tyler Adams to show himself a little bit. So we'll see if he's able to or not. Then we've got Nottingham and Newcastle. Nottingham do go on. Nottingham are leading with a goal from Muriel 1-0, and then Newcastle basically score three unanswered with Isak. Joe Linton with an unbelievable goal in the second half where he was switched. He started on one side of the field, he was switched to the other side, and he's able to get the ball kind of like a counter and or transition moment. And he takes on the fullback, and then he cuts inside and just he has an unbelievable curler with his left foot that I don't feel like anyone thought he was going to attempt to do. And just really, really was an unbelievable goal. And then Harvey Barnes came on, and that was probably a really nice little team goal that Harvey Barnes was able to get on the end of finishing because they came from turning Nottingham out of Nottingham over. And then there's a really clever little kind of flick between Harvey Barnes and Tonali. Tonali has since come on here, and Tonali kind of plays Harvey Barnes making a run. He rewards it, and Harvey Barnes is able to finish that chance. Harvey Barnes is having a pretty good season to start the year for Newcastle, and a lot of it's been off the bench. And the interesting thing there is how do you play Anthony Gordon? Anthony Gordon best on his left side or best on his right side? Anthony Gordon ended up kind of getting a knock here, so you had Joe Linton, played over, and then you move Harvey Barnes over, and it worked out, and so it wasn't it was a very weird game because there wasn't a whole lot separating them, and that's the reason why it was 1-1. But the second half was Nottingham Forest weren't really able to keep the ball, and Newcastle just felt like we're able to just kind of push on a little bit more. We see the tactical shift happen. We see Gordon shift back over to the left. Joe Linton moved over on the other side, and you're starting to see Bruno actually starting to influence the game a little bit more. Um, and just Nottingham Forest. What happens is, yeah, maybe it's one of those cases where if you're not able to get Chris Wood the ball, it's almost like Newcastle figured Nottingham Forest weren't really going to be able to threaten them through the middle. They kind of found a way to mark Gibbs White a little bit out of the game, and they were very good at defending out wide. They didn't allow the crosses to come in where Chris Wood could actually challenge those. So it was really good work rate out of possession by Newcastle, where they forced Hudson Odoi and Anthony Elanga to actually beat them 1v1, to not settle for getting the ball out wide to try some crosses in because they weren't able to find Chris Wood the ball much, and it was pretty good game plan by Newcastle. Newcastle really took the game over in the second half. 17 shots and 6 on target. Nottingham only 9 and 3. Again, only a couple of moments for Chris Wood, and I think the best chance probably came 4 minutes into the game. So Newcastle starting to get back on track. Nottingham Forest came into this game, I think, third in the table, and Newcastle only in the game only 1 point off them after Newcastle having a bit of a rough go to start the season. I think they're eighth in the table or so, but they're only 1 point away from Nottingham Forest now. Only maybe a good result from actually being in the top four. So that just shows how congested everything is. Isak back, and that has certainly helped them. But Joe Linton is back and back to scoring. And again, the aggressive side is back. They weren't just sitting off, allowing the opposition to have the ball. They're very aggressive at running, making sure there was ball pressure, anyone on it. And it's maybe a rare game where having Dan Burn on the field maybe worked out because Chris Wood isn't exactly fleet of pace. He is a threat in the box, but he's not really going to to make those runs in behind in a high line. And Burn himself is like 6'6" as well. He's actually that's tailor made to his kind of game. So Forrest, it maybe kind of fit a little bit into a trap here. There was a couple of great breakaway moments. Forrest did have a breakaway where maybe Hudson Odoi lost a duel to Lewis Hall. If not, Elanga maybe took too long to play Wood in behind. There was a moment when it looked like Dan Burn actually did look like he was going to get beat, and he actually had to eat a yellow card. Like that was really early in the game as well. So there were moments when it did feel like Forest did have some breakaway moments. A Nottingham Forest game is kind of that. It's not really a team where you're going to see a team kind of dominate the ball. It's going to be can you find a way 3 or 4 moments in 90 minutes to get in behind to create a chance? And in this case, they weren't able to do that. So a pretty good game plan for Newcastle. Pretty good way for them to get back to where they probably feel like they should be. They haven't had the best start to the season. Eddie Howe's a pretty good coach though, and we have seen him make some pretty big moves. One thing I do like is Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall playing at left back for them instead of Dan Burn. They're using him as like a third center back for build up play, and he's quite good on the ball for them. But he can also advance forward as well, and he's also quite just clever at when he does go into midfield, he doesn't lose the ball. He's quite forward minded with it. He's a good player, good little player for them. Good little player for England, going forward as well. And it just feels like they're a little bit more balanced now with Longstaff coming back in. Though Tonali didn't look out of place either, but it just feels like they've got legs in midfield with Joe Linton, with Willock, back in inside. Bruno Gomes was able to really, dictate play in the second half as well. And just again, Isak when he gets in the box is always going to be a threat as well. And he's also really good at dropping in for the ball. He's good at doing that link up play to help them build in midfield too. And you always have those runs with Gordon ahead too. So. The only negative is again the defensive side, Dan Burn and Shar versus other attackers. I don't necessarily know how much they can get away with that. I don't really know how long they're going to be without Nathan Botman. They do have that player that they signed from Bournemouth, Kelly, that they haven't really given many game times to. So still feels like Newcastle's is limited, at least at the back end, but there's not a reason to be negative here too. And with Nottingham Forest, it wasn't real. It's a game at City Ground. It's very weird because Chris Wood they've gone to Newcastle for some players. They've brought in Chris Wood from Newcastle. They bought Elliot Anderson actually from Newcastle too, and just neither were able to haunt their former sides. Elliot Anderson didn't start because Gibson White had returned back to fitness, but Gibson White wasn't really that impactful, so maybe it was a mistake to try him so early. Not really able to impact things. And then we get to Tottenham and Ipswich, and this is probably the last game I touch on. I don't really want to go with that over, and I probably am. Okay, so Tottenham and Ipswich, they lose 2-1. Smotic on a bike. When that happens, it's usually not going to be your game. And then Delap makes it 2-1, or maybe that's an own goal, or 2-0. It's 2-0 at halftime. It didn't feel like Tottenham were with that out of it. And then Betancourt after a cross makes it 2-1. And in the second half, Tottenham were much better in the second half as far as at least dominating the ball. Ipswich you're kind of laying off, and they were allowing it a little bit. They were Spurs were only able to cross it in there. I think they crossed it like 35 times. They weren't really able to create. And that's when I was looking at who was playing, and I thought this was the game for Madison. And I was really surprised we didn't see him come on even earlier. But I feel like the way that this game messed up is how it started. So the lineup, no Van de Ven. So the lineup is Pedro Porro, Romero, Dragishin, and Udogi, Sarr, and Betancourt, and Kulusevski, then Brennan Johnson, Son, and Solanke. So no Van de Ven. And Dragishin makes a mistake a little bit for one of the goals. And then Madison, again, is bench. Kulusevski's pretty good number 10, but I feel like he's better then Brendan Johnson. There's a really early moment in the opening, like 4 minutes or so, where there's a great ball sent in by Son that Brendan Johnson is able to collect, but he's not able to finish. If that goes in, maybe this is an entirely different game. There were a couple moments when actually Tottenham were able to press Ipswich into mistake. Muric had a couple really howlers of some errors, but again, that didn't lead to anything other than maybe a shot or two or a cross or two that was maybe misplaced. And really, the first goal comes from basically Ipswich outrunning Tottenham. And this is when if you're kind of a Spurs fan, this is where you can maybe be a little upset, a little annoyed. Because there's just a ball that looks like it's going to go out of bounds. Ben Johnson is able to keep it in play, and then he plays it is it Smart? He plays it to Hutchinson, and Hutchinson's basically able to go past a couple of challenges. One by Betancourt. Betancourt has got to foul him at this point. I don't like that he doesn't. But also, when Hutchinson's able to get past Betancourt, he's got two people joining him, and it's Leif Davies and it's Smotic. And what the problem for me is when Ben Johnson saves the ball, basically Leif Davies and Smotic are kind of Smotic is a little bit ahead, but Leif Davies is kind of neck and neck with Brendan Johnson, and Brendan Johnson just doesn't track Leif Davies. And what happens is when Hutchinson's able to go past Betancourt, now you've got Leif Davies and Smotic basically being able to take on Pedro Porro 2v1. Porro isn't always the best defensively. 1v1 anyways, and now he's got to take on two, and what happens is to basically overlap him, and he can't really this is what happens with the second goal, and that basically his cross finds it for the tap in, but that just really shouldn't have happened. And then the way the first goal comes from is it's one of those where I believe it's Kajust. He's able to just go past either Kulishevsky or it's maybe it's both Kulishevsky and Betancourt. So again, just weak in the duels, weak in the challenge. And then there's a couple of times where there were a couple of it's Hutchinson, it's Morrissey. They make a couple overlap runs. They're able to just keep the ball. There's a first cross that's sent in that's blocked, but eventually it comes in anyways. There's no ball pressure, one, and then two. I think Delap just does enough to kind of win the ball, or I think it's Dragic. He wins the header, but it just kind of basically just goes all straight up, doesn't really go anywhere. And then Asmadic is just there to kind of beat Pedro Porro to just a bike. And it's fortunate and whatnot, but Ipswich even before this were creating danger just by just running at any kind of loose ball, just outworking our Spurs out of possession, and just it was surprising because Tottenham are at home. They've just had they're not the best week in Champions League, and you figured maybe they would have come out with a little more just a little more kind of say, wanted to maybe make a statement. And instead, they made a statement, just kind of the opposite. They were better in the second half, and I can say that they were unlucky a little bit in the second half. Solanke actually did put the ball in the net, and it's just it's off a corner kick, and basically his shot ricochets off his hand to go in, so it doesn't count. There was a moment when Pedro Porro did have a cross that did strike a hand. I thought it was in the box. I thought that could have been a PK. So just result-wise, this could have flipped. I don't think that's the biggest issue for Spurs fans to think about. It's not great to give Ipswich the first win. So they're going to care about the result anyways. But the performance-wise was troubling because of that reason. Because in the second half, they finally were able to get the ball to kind of dominate the ball a little bit more because they were struggling in their build-up in the first half. Second half, that was fixed. Ipswich were playing off them because they had the two-goal lead to play to defend. And by doing that, you're giving up a lot of corner kicks, and that's basically what happens. They were able to defend a couple corner kicks, but they also allowed a goal to be scored on. But the main thing to me was just if Son isn't going to be special 1v1, who is your creator? Maybe it's Kulishevsky, but I just feel like you can maybe focus on Kulishevsky, you can focus on Son, Solanke, who's going to be able to find him the ball when you need him to. That's where Madison comes in. I just feel like it was a mistake not to play him. There's one thing to say as well. Towards the end of the game, there was a chance where there was a mistake where Solanke was in on goal, in on the box, and he takes a touch that takes him too far wide, and it does force him a pretty good Muric save. I feel like if Solanke lifts it, he probably does score. I feel like Solanke in his Bournemouth, form last season probably would have made it count. Doesn't. But there are more issues I think at play than necessarily that. It's very they're not able to be consistent, and I feel like that is the one thing that you talking to a Spurs fan a couple of weeks ago. That was one thing that she was saying, and you look at the results, and it's hard to not disagree. They came back so big against Aston Villa, scoring 4 goals. Now, a couple of that was with Richarlison. They just lost him, but it was Lanky getting on 2, and you're figuring maybe he's finally gonna get going, and he's not. They're also not really able to they're using him kind of weird. They're using him as like a mini Harry Kane where he's dropping in for, to try to, be a member, to be a number in the middle of the field. They're not using him to kind of stretch. They're not using him to make runs into channels. And again, with if you're not going to use if Ben Johnson isn't going to be a goal scorer a game, and if he's not going to track back out of possession, I don't really know the reason to use him too. Also, Sarr gets started. I thought Sarr and Betancourt were both scared of the ball. In the first half, that was the biggest problem as well. The opening 10 minutes, Ipswich are just playing a lot of pressure where Spurs are trying to pass it into the midfield and they're having to go backwards, and then they're just going long. So the reason why Betancourt started was a bit surprising. The reason why Sarr started over Basuma. Now I feel like you could do Sarr and Basuma together. If that's not going to work because of the same issues, could you try Madison and with someone instead, and instead of Kulusevski in Madison and Sarr, Madison in like basically that 10 role, not necessarily Madison in midfield. Madison drops for the ball and he becomes that way, and you still have Kulusevski on the right. I'm a bit surprised we haven't necessarily seen that yet. You still have Sarr and Basuma in there, or the 2 ball winners. You could try to find a way to play Archie Gray in there. He's pretty good with the ball at his feet. There were a couple ways to maybe fix this, but a little bit surprised there because they were pretty poor at their building, their passing in the first half. No Van de Ven. Van de Ven struggled versus Crystal Palace, but Dragic really does seem like he's struggling to fit in too. Where that Christian Romero doesn't seem to be the same defender without Van de Ven. So there are a couple warning signs a little bit for Spurs. So we're kind of hit on that a little bit here. 4 big chances for Ipswich, only 8 shots and 3 on target. But and Spurs with 17 and 5. Spurs did have majority of possession. Spurs did, I think, eventually. No, actually, they did kind of edge. They basically did even the XG with 1.5 to 1.6. No magical second half like we saw versus Villa, because Spurs were pretty poor in that first half versus Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago too. But there are a couple of those are the couple things that I'm thinking about at least now. Find a way to get Solanke going, because this is a guy that scored 19 goals, putting in multiple chances last season, and it was with Bournemouth. You feel like at a minimum it should be about the same, because you figure there would be more creation for him, but they're not able to create for him at all. And then Werner came on, and he's given a shot because Richarlison's out injured, and he created a spark for them. And it was interesting to see Werner come on, and it wasn't for Son, so they just found a way to just fit in an extra attacker. And the only negative here is he created a spark, but the end product is just not there. He's getting the ball in the box and he's blasting it into the stands instead of at least getting it on goal. The only creation they were able to do was just a lot of decent crosses into the box, and it was decent. The delivery was good, and it was forcing Ipswich to have to defend, to have to basically head it out wide for corner kicks, and they did score on one of them corner kicks, but it wasn't enough. So good big win from Ipswich. I think I've said it before, of the 3 promoted sides. Now, if Southampton can find a way to get a goal scorer, maybe Southampton can get into the situation, but Ipswich to me just feels like they've got enough to stay up. They've got goals in them, in my opinion, with Hutchinson and Delap. They got Axel Tranzubi back. It looked like a better defensive line. This is a funny game because it was without Calvin Phillips, and I felt like they were better without Calvin Phillips, with Morrissey and Kajusta. Now, is it enough? I don't necessarily know. I still feel like defensively, Leif Davis is quite good going forward, but defensively, I still don't necessarily know there. I have seen this Ipswich team get absolutely thumped by a West Ham team I thought was pretty poor too. So, but that said, they've been getting close. They were close. I guess a couple of weeks ago when they also had a lead, and they also, I think it was to Leicester, where they also let a goal in at the very end. So they were getting close here. They were close first. They basically drew a pretty good Aston Villa side a couple of weeks ago as well. So so there were a couple of reasons for optimism there for Ipswich. And then with let's see, one thing you can say too, the probably the reason why this game happened is the work rate between Smodic and Johnson was significant. The defensive work rate by Ipswich wide players, Ben Johnson as well, it's the key. The midfield's compact, but what they're doing is, they're wide attacking players weren't really attackers. They were doing well to run backwards and to make sure that if Brennan Johnson or Son got the ball, it was always the 2v1 or 2v2. 2v1 in their favor. It was always the double team. So, and they were doing well to block those crosses with the fullbacks or wing backs. Good to be compact. Moisés is just to being enough. And then so there we go. And then we got Crystal Palace and Fulham. Fulham do go on to win 2-0. Crystal Palace came into this game very limpered. You thought maybe they were going to finally have a chance to build some momentum after a decent run of results, but here no Eze, and that kind of showed. You've tried to play Sarr there. Sarr's a good player, but I don't. It's not like for like. No Nkadia as well, so you lost someone to bring off the bench, but also at the back end was where it hurt. Mark Gahey had to play in midfield next to Devernay. No Adam Morton. Klein was played instead because of that. So you have Matson Lacroix. Lacroix had a pretty good game. For the most part, he stopped an Emil Smith Rowe chance in the first half, but then he also gave away a ball that Smith Rowe was able to get on the end of, and just Fulham were the better side defensively, and then it was a 1-0 game, and then Kamada got sent off after a pretty bad challenge, and he that basically was all she wrote for Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace are limbering with some injuries. They've started the season kind of rough. We'll see if what Glasnow is able to respond with. I mean, they did have 4 big chances. They weren't that far out of play, but passing wise, it was 270 to 531. Fulham have turned into a team that can keep the ball, but can produce high quality looks as well. Whether or not it's with Raul Jimenez, or if you want to take him out, you still got Rodrigo Munoz that was pretty good for them last season. They've lost some people like William, but on comes Harry Wilson to do something off the bench. You've got Adama Traore to come off the bench because now we're seeing Emil Smith Rowe and Reece Nelson get a chance to play in the attack. You still have Pereira, and just this Fulham team has a way to play. And the other thing to talk about is there was a ball that was cleared off the line, and lo and behold, that was from Anderson, a former Palace player. So Marco Silva is one of the stories of the season, like a lot of teams, really. He's got them humming along, and they've got them in a place where you don't know where they're going to end up because they aren't that far away from actually pushing the top sides, and they aren't far away from the 2 week stretch from where they'd be back where someone else is. So yeah, they had 28 shots in that. I think first 5 was first Brentford. They two good weeks back to back. Another game where Robertson and Tata are really good fullbacks. I really like how they use the fullbacks going forward. They aren't just asking them to either be a fake center back or fake in midfield. They use them forward and they use them in the attack. I really like it. They're a fun team to watch. We don't necessarily know where it's going to really lead to anything, but if nothing else, the goal is 1, stay up, and then 2, put a good product on for the fans, and they are doing that, and I do think that's respectable. Also, Marco Silva really is a good coach. And then with Palace, they're missing so many players, and the red card kills the game off. I don't really know what to really talk about here. Mateta has started to get going for them a little bit, started to be a threat. I think Sarr is a pretty good player. So you get Sarr and Eze back, and Mateta. That's a front 3 that can really do stuff. So we'll see. Maybe they need the international break, I think, more than any other team, because right now they are in a relegation fight, and I don't feel like they should be. But anyways, that is where they are. And then with Wolves and Southampton played pretty well, and they probably feel they were undone by with 2 breaks because they even score, and one of the goals is chalked off. But Wolves do go on to win 2-0 with a Sarabia goal, and then an unbelievable goal by Mateus Cunha, who continues to have a really good season for them. Gateway O'Neill needed this because I think they started the game in last place. Wolves are another team that I feel like they're probably going to be fighting for safety, but I feel like they have enough to stay up as long as Cunha can stay healthy. At least Cunha is kind of doing a one man kind of show right now. Wolves every kind of week though have moved to that back three with Breno, Lawson, and Tati Gomez, and them playing Semedo and Nori in that wing back shape, and it's pretty good. And they found a way to bring in Sarabia to play with Cunha, so now you have with Larson as well, and you're starting to see a little creativity, a little bit more in their attack. It's a back three. It can be a defensive shape, but they've got wing backs that are really good at going forward too. And then with Southampton, you just Cam Archer and Armstrong. Is that enough going forward? Adam Lallana is pretty good with the ball at his feet. Fernandez can be pretty good as well. Kyle Walker-Peters and Manning, also kind of is a similar shape. Almost like a five back that can be a back three with the wing backs. Southampton are good at controlling the ball. No Tyler Dibbing was a bit of a surprise. No Sugawara as well. But at that said, and they were unlucky. There was a because what happens for the Cunha goal is there's a foul that happens before it. It's an unbelievable hit, but they were unlucky. But here's the thing: 9 shots and only 0 on target They have 70% of possession, 600 passes, and you don't have anything on target. I just feel they need to find a way to either play Paul Onuachu, find a way to play Sulemana. You find a way to get something more out of Cam Archer or Armstrong or something, because just they play pretty decent stuff. They're pretty good at controlling the ball. Just they're not a threat at all, and I don't really feel like that's Russell Martin's fault. So if they do, in my opinion, if a manager gets sacked early and it's Russell Martin because Southampton are going to just go down, I feel like he's done enough to probably warrant interest, because you give this guy better players, I would think they would be getting better results. I do think it's as simple as that. And then we end with West Ham and Everton. This ends 0-0. Not the best on the eye. No Edson Alvarez because of the red card that happened with Nottingham Forest a couple weeks ago. No Kudus still as well. So you're kind of reliant on Jared Bowen to be spectacular. Lucas Paqueta was able to create a couple of things for Danny Ings, but that was kind of it. Everton not really able to create either. No Dwight McNeil this game, and just not enough. Not able to find Calvert-Lewin enough, and not the best game. So I'm not really gonna spend a ton to talk about it. So that is where we are. With West Ham, we kind of touch on them. It's very weird. They played a lot of big money for Fulkirk. We haven't really seen him, and they have played a lot of. They spent pretty big in the summer, and we just haven't really seen it come to fruition yet. Somerville on maybe a different day does maybe put a chance away. Somerville, has been given a chance with Kudus being out. He's up against Ashley Young, and I feel like he should be able to get behind him a little bit more than he did. Without Kudus, do you maybe see Danny Ings and Antonio tried together? Because I feel like Danny Ings, when he came on, actually did offer them a little bit something. And defensively with Everton, it's not the pretty stuff, but defensively, they're starting to get clean sheets, and you got Pickford as Pickford, and you got Braithwaite back. So there's something to say there. And I am going fast because I don't want it to be a 3-hour episode. And so I am going to stop it here. So thank you for joining in. And then until then, you stay squatty and stop.